Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tea with Trashellie. I'm Ashley,
And I'm Elle.
and this is a little podcast that we do here in our unofficial I Love You fan server. It's been a little minute since we've gotten together, but we've found some time in our schedule to come back and do a new episode.
Yay!
And what is more pressing right now than being able to discuss the current Hirahara Christmas party, right? So tonight we're kind of going to be dissecting this little arc kind of in its entirety. I'm not going to say that we're just going to be like doing a full breakdown of everything, but we just kind of like want to sit down and talk about a lot of things that have been going on in there.
Yeah,
Um,
talking through some of the salient points that come up for us as we read these episodes, some of the ways that it ties some of our character dynamics together, some of the new questions it raises, some of the answers it gives.
yeah.
If you're reading I Love You and the recent chapter left you blue or feeling like it's too good to be true, we get together and share our theory, bend down and praise the almighty Quimchi. Come join us for tea with Trashellie.
Those of you who are not in our server may not know, but every week we post little fast pass threads where our members get together and get to discuss the episodes as they drop. First off, always really fun. Lots of people join them, lots of great conversation. But something our members may have noticed is that Elle and I have not really been in those threads as much lately, partly because we're kind of busy people lately, partly because a lot of what we're getting lately is kind of answers to things that we have kind of been anticipating, but also because we kind of just really wanted to get together and just yap about things, you know? There's a lot of stuff going on that I think is just really great for us to get together and just talk about, you know?
Yeah.
So without further ado, let's jump into this. Obviously, like, we're going into this and Kosuke is just continuing to spiral, right? And we all know by now this is something that I love, and I think fandom in general has come to really, I'm going to loosely say enjoy because it's for whatever reason, right? Whether it's because, you still hate Kosuke and you like to see him suffer, or you are really enjoying getting to connect the pieces together that are coming from this and what Kosuke's spiraling is telling us, or you've been waiting for his downfall and now he's downfalled and you're like, oh wait, this is actually really sad, this is making me feel bad, except when he's drunk and pathetic and really pitiful, he kind of looks, there's a little something going on there, right? But you still want to like swaddle him up like a little baby and hold him. you know your results may vary.
Kimchi likes to
But
draw her characters in their most beautiful state when they are in their greatest suffering.
right, and you can tell like Kosuke, like, we haven't heard from Kimchi in a while who her current favorite character is because they tend to change, but I know at one point in time, and I think it's probably always going to be that way, Kosuke has been a favorite character of hers, and I feel like you can tell he just gets some of the most beautiful, pathetic images. Like when he turns and looks at people with those sad, pathetic eyes, and you're just like, my
That's your
heart.
baby boy.
Right. He looks so baby boy at sometimes. And I'm like, there's something, it's like that juxtaposition, right? Of like the Kosuke who plays pretend so hard trying to emulate Rand and, has been carrying all of that stress with him, versus this Kosuke who is very much resembling a young child who doesn't know what to do. And he very much has that air of like childlike helplessness. And it's like, oh, you're so helpless, you poor little thing. And it tugs on my little non-existent maternal heartstrings,
I know.
But so he's really spiraling. He's like in this super bad place. He's at this point where he feels like he has nowhere else to go. He doesn't know who else he can trust. We've long known he feels like Hansuke's affection towards him is obligate due to family ties, but like he's saying it out loud now and going so far as to, acknowledge that the relationship he has with Eugene leads him to feel like he can't trust Hansuke, because how does he know that he's not laughing behind his back? How does he know that he's not in cahoots with Eugene and sitting there and whispering these little things with him or with her?
And with Kosuke, like, we're seeing this duality effect of all of the fear that Yui has always ingrained into his head is very much there and at the strongest that it's ever been, but he doesn't have the protective mechanisms of denial that he's used to, where he can't say, he can't rely on the relationship that he has with Yui. He can't rely on the dread and fear he has towards Noel. He can't rely on the delusions anymore to keep him going and to support the, like, oh, my life is okay, because even though, everyone's talking about me behind my back and nobody likes me and people, want what I have and will be out to get me and I can't trust them, even though all that's true, I'm part of this incredible family. I have the support of my mother and the Hirahara name. I have to beat Noel, so anything bad that I do is justified. It's just I have to, or he deserves it. All of that has crumbled, but he still has all that fear. So it's just this downward spiral and spiral and spiral. And like you said, we see him for the first time starting to voice these things, where he's telling Hansuke that that he bets that he talks all the time behind his back, just like everyone else, and he has nowhere to go. And at the same time, we have that calling out for Noel and lashing out at Yui at the party, where he can't contain any of it anymore. And then that's what's coming out. But his internal monologue, we get all of that racing red thought dialogue of everything that he's ever heard and all the new realizations that he's having, where he just can't keep the denial that's been protecting him his whole life anymore, and it's all crashing down on him and he's crashing out at it.
There is clearly so much panic and anxiety just filling him with so much dread, because, right, like you said, it's something that he can no longer deny. And what do you do with all of that? Where do you go with all of that? He has this sense now that he can't trust his mother, even though so much of what she has said to him has always been what guides him. And so it has him questioning everything as well, right? We kind of see those different thoughts racing through his mind, where it's kind of like questioning even things with Noel, questioning everything that he's believed about him. And it's just kind of the way that we can see the ways that she's colored his life so heavily that now he has to step back and look at, and he has to question all of it. And it's leading us to a point where we obviously know he's going to end up being in this position of, like, what do you trust? What do you know? Who even are you if all of this is something that you can't trust? And I do think it's like really fascinating that we get to see him actually lashing out at the dinner. Not because it's something that's unexpected, but I think more so because seeing the reactions of people to seeing him lash out. I will bring up the first of my images. I'm saying this as if they are my evidence. It feels like it.
I would like to present to the court.
I would like to present to you all, if I can remember where okay, it's right here. So the first one is when Yui reaches out to comfort Kosuke after he talks about his job, right? Or is it when he spoke about Noel? I already can't remember. But she reaches out and touches his hand, and he flinches away, much like we've seen Noel do.
Yes, it's
But
from
look
the exact
at Yui's eyes. The way, like, we don't see Yui. Well, first off, like, as far as Yui's expressions go, she tends to, be very carefully curated. Obviously, more recently, we're seeing a lot more expression range, but this expression in general is very new and very shocking to see on her. Like the sheer shock that she has over seeing him react this way,
Right.
but like
And the
especially
last
her
time,
pupils.
yeah, the last time that we saw her shocked like this was probably when Noel pled guilty at the trial. And even that, she
Mm-hmm.
still had the whole rest of her frame was even tempered, and it was just the wide eyes. But this, like, her whole facial expression has shifted, and we've never seen that kind of exaggerated language from her.
Mm-hmm. And in our notes, Elle pointed out very clearly that this is very much the same body language that Noel has had when Yui has touched him as well. And I think I can't remember if it's at this point that Kosuke kind of has like the faintest memory of there being some kind of discussion when he was knocked out. I think he doesn't really remember anything about it, but he knows that his
He
mother
knows
and father
something.
were there. And you know, there's been a lot of discussion about the placement of Yui's hand while Kosuke was laying in bed, and a lot of discussion even far prior about, you know, did Yui ever touch Noel inappropriately? Because, you know, that's one of the questions about like Noel flinching so much at her touch. Um, Obviously, I'm going to point out that there are many other reasons that Noel could be very adverse to her touch. But the fact now that we're seeing the same exact reaction from both Kosuke and Noel is certainly interesting. Obviously, Kosuke could be in this position where he just feels so averse to Yui because he doesn't trust her and he's afraid of her. But the fact that it's the very same kind of reaction makes it really interesting, especially with, you know, Yui reacting in that kind of shocked way. Obviously, of course, I'm not going to say like it's out of expectation for her to look so shocked, but I feel like it's very interesting that we have that emphasis placed upon it too,
Yeah,
you
that
know?
is the most shocked she's ever looked. And you know, when we think about it, like, Kosuke is her life project, right? She has
Hmm.
curated him from from before he was even born to be
Right.
the person that she needs him to be, and to be at mommy's side, to only trust her. And here he is, and she can't even brush her finger against him.
Right. And that is also a good point for us to make, is that even if this is not about any kind of past, you know, improperness that Yui has perhaps ever done towards the boys, what we do know from this period is that Yui is grappling for control of Kosuke. She knows she's losing control of him. She knows he's acting out of line. So much of this episode is Yui in her mask, you know, playing hostess and pretending that there's absolutely nothing going on. Things are just totally normal. Kosuke is just not feeling well, you know? Sometimes it happens. Even though Kosuke is behaving so out of the norm in ways that she can't anticipate, in ways that she can't control. She knows that he's unmedicated because he hasn't been eating, and she can't convince him to. None of her usual methods of manipulation have an effect on him, and she feels him pulling away. That's such a big part of it, and I think that's probably also a big part of her reaction to him flinching away. He's, you know, he's never had an issue with her, even though she's overbearing and always in his space, and he's always trying to push her away and, you know, get away from her. He's never been successful, and he's never really pushed so hard that he actually flinches away. So, you know, I think if nothing else, you know, at the very least, it's a major wake up call for her that Kosuke doesn't trust her, or at the very least, Kosuke is pulling away from her, which, you know, like you said, that is her baby. She needs him at her side. She needs him to be under her thumb. If he's pulling away and she doesn't have control of him, what's she supposed to do?
Exactly. And she herself brings up the only other time that this has happened in Kosuke's college years. And she talks about, he um like he's never been farther from her other than then, but he came back, and all the things that he sacrificed to be where he is now. And when he was in college, I get the impression that he just kind of wasn't around her, like that sort of natural distancing that happens when people move away or you go off into a new stage of life where you're just not in contact the same way that you were. But that's too far for her, right? And
Mhm.
also, he starts to develop his own identity, but he wasn't afraid of her the way that he's
Right.
expressing now. And at that point, she still had some pawns that she could use to bring him back, i.e., Noel. And she
Mhm.
doesn't have those now. She's losing control of other things already, and her big piece is pulling away in a way that he never has before. And she doesn't have a good way to bring him back. She's trying here. We see her start trying to manipulate him back in the bedroom, but she's kind of grasping at straws.
Right. And it is very interesting too, because like you said, previously Noel was how she manipulated him. And obviously because he's in jail now, she can't do that. But also something that she's realizing, probably to her horror, is that Kosuke is not looking upon Noel with that same derision that he's always carried. Like his whole issue with this entire party is, how are we sitting here trying to celebrate and be merry and festive when he says one of us is in jail? And like you know how much it must bother Yui to hear Kosuke refer to Noel as one of us, especially when for so long he has treated Noel as an outsider, has viewed Noel as an outsider, has made him his personal punching bag. And now he's calling him one of us and saying we shouldn't be celebrating because one of us is in jail and we should care more about that. Yui, who has set Kosuke up from the very beginning to view Noel as his enemy and to ensure that he will always be a threat to him. And now he's one of us.
At the same time that Yui is scary enough to flinch away from and lash out at, where
Mhm.
Noel is becoming one of us and Yui is becoming other.
It's just it's very satisfying for us, because we get to see this development that Kosuke is very rapidly having, by the way. But for Yui to be losing such rapid control of him in this way, it's clearly it's no wonder like she's spiraling hard, and we see it throughout this whole party. Again, like I said, she's masked much of the time. uh, the times that we do really see her eyes open are typically when she is making threats. Um, and there are certain times when she's speaking to Kosuke when we see her eyes open. But a lot of the times she's, masked up, partly because Yui plays that hostess role. That is part of her charade, but also because she's got to hold it together and pretend that, I guess it's more like Yui has to reduce herself to this role when there are other things that she cares more about. But this is that role she has to do in order to placate both sides. Both sides being, maintain that Hirahara Kim relationship balance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But I would like to kind of, because you did mention it, the discussion that Yui and Kosuke have in the bedroom, because you mentioned that this is part of her making this really honest and true effort to roll him back to her side. And it is something where like she's very much masked, but we do get to see those vulnerable moments of her honesty, and we kind of get to see a little more into Kosuke's head and see where he's standing. Because when he's talking to Rand, that's probably the most honest he's ever been when he speaks to his father about his job, even though we see his eyes closed when he says that, maybe he's not ready for this position and maybe he should I think he said postpone it, right?
Yeah, like
Um,
postpone it or defer it, wait
yeah.
in some way.
And I find it interesting that his eyes are closed at this time. And I don't know if it's because what he really means is he just doesn't want the job, if it's more of one of those meta kind of things where he's saying something that he's trying to believe in, but that's the lie,
I feel like it's probably a combination of a couple of things driving the closed eyes there. I think one of them is that, this isn't really Kosuke's dream.
This is
His
true, yes.
yeah, this is a dream that's kind of been fed to him in pursuit of his real desires. So there's
Mhm.
that one. Then I think there's partly the kind of trying to convince himself. And
Right.
I think part of it is also there's a lot that Kosuke is unsure of right now and isn't ready for, but the job isn't the part of it that's making him feel sick.
Right. But it's also like, even if he isn't being sorry, entirely truthful in that moment, it's still one of the most honest moments he's had with Rand, because
Absolutely.
usually he would not say any of that. He would be on his best behavior. He would try to be perfect little son. He would try to speak very properly. He would reassure his father that, don't worry, maybe I just feel a little intimidated by the changes, but I promise you I'm going to do a really good job. But
Yeah,
he's
it'll all
not
be
doing
okay. This
any
is
of
what I
that.
want. No,
Right.
he's willing to admit that there's something in him that doesn't feel good about where his life is going.
Right. And we don't get to see a lot from it. But Rand is clocking this. He is very aware that, Kosuke is saying things that he normally wouldn't. Songchul is also very aware of this, but we'll deal with him later. Um, Rand also takes very clear notice when when Kosuke gets into it with Songhyun. Like, he just has like this very startled expression, and that's a very null like moment for Kosuke, I think. He's not the kind of person, he's the kind of person to talk down to people, but not in the way that he did to Songhyun, which was funny. But before we get sidetracked on that, it's very interesting that we never get to hear what Rand's response is. And I'm very upset about that, because obviously Yui intervenes and she's like, oh, he's sick. He doesn't mean this. He's got a fever. People just say things and they're delirious. But she follows him when he goes up to his room, because obviously she needs to manipulate him back on track. Um, and she gets right at it. um, it's very fascinating to me that we're sitting here in his childhood room, which again is just, I think we've talked about this on another episode, but if we haven't, I talked about this in a Fast Pass episode, Fast Pass thread. Um, we see this childhood room full of art, and I mean like art in the painting sense, I mean it in the musical sense. I'm pretty sure he has a drafting desk in there that maybe he uses for art. He's got an easel. He's got Copic markers.
Right.
Those
It's
are
just
expensive. That's legit.
I know.
He All of the piano music he has in there. He was such a passionate artist. And we're
He's
seeing this as Yui,
creative.
right? And we see so much of this as Yui is playing that manipulation game again, right? The whole, oh, you wanted so badly to meet your father's expectations and be just as good as him. No, better than him. You accelerated yourself. You wanted this. You did this. Blah, blah, blah. You made so many sacrifices. And, like, especially having that laid out right on top of seeing all of the creative, artsy stuff that he sacrificed to become this person he doesn't want to be, that doesn't fit him, is really painful.
It is. And at the same time, Yui is sitting there framing it all as, it was hard for me, but I had to support you as your mother. As he's molded his identity into this and is looking at the remnants of everything he had to leave behind.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted you to stay a little boy for so long. Except she's the one who's constantly telling him, your daddy's not going to love you if you don't do this. The only way to earn his affection is if you go really hard and accelerate your life and go take his position. Like, what did you sacrifice, ma'am? Oh, yeah.
It's just, it's obviously it's just manipulation, and it's very in line with everything it's very in line with their dynamic thus far. But it's just so sad to see, especially since there's been so truthfully few glimpses to us of the child that Kosuke was,
Mm-hmm.
especially where at first when we see him in the structured routine. We hear about how he graduated early. We see his work ethic and him visiting Rand at the company, and it's only in these really distressing moments for him where we see the glimpses of who was the actual child behind all of that, where we see his music when he's reminiscing in 212 about his absent relationship with Rand, and his recitals that weren't attended. And then the next time that we really see that side of Kosuke is right here when he's crashing out and he's sitting in his childhood room, and you're remarking about all the things that he left behind to become the person that he wants to be, when we know that that's not who he wanted to be at all.
Mm-hmm. When the things that he sacrificed to become the person Yui molded him into being.
Yes.
An interesting thing I would like to note is that the only other person who has given us insight into those parts of Kosuke is, of course, Noel, who talks about, when Kosuke played the piano and how much he enjoyed that and wishes he would go back to that. And while Noel isn't saying it himself, he, at least, to my biased interpretation, almost kind of gives this interpretation that maybe it was the only time he ever saw Kosuke happy. Because the things that Noel wants for Kosuke is for him to live for himself and to stop chasing after a father who, to their, the way that they see it, doesn't give a damn about them. He wants him to do the things that made him happy and made him who he was. So we do get this inclination that Kosuke loved doing these things. Like, he's got 2 different Van Gogh pieces in his room.
Right, and we also, Noel tried to give him music books for his birthday. He gave him drawings. Noel understood how much the arts meant to Kosuke, and he was the only one who did something with that, other than treat it as just kind of a character building hobby.
Right? I know, we can't let every episode ever be Trashellie cries about Kosuke's stolen youth and potential, but that's kind of where I Love You is right now. So we just have to cry about it a little bit. It does make me sad, because
the scene of the bedroom is just so much.
Right. It just really lays out for you just how much Yui molded him into something he never wanted to be. And it's not the first time we've seen this, obviously. The entirety of the club celebration scene when Hansuke and Kosuke go out to celebrate after his interview, and Eugene shows up and Kosuke gets drunk and the paranoia comes out in full force, and he's probably mixing his drugs with his drinks, so he's extra out there, and he's hearing things, which is all of his deep-seated fears. And it kind of culminates in this acknowledgement to us as readers that he doesn't want this. He's not ready for this. He's only doing this because he's being pushed into it. So it's not the first time we've had this laid out for us, but it just hurts even more to see it when it's superimposed with all of the things that once upon a time he loved and had to give up. Ultimately, because, again, he thought that this is the only path to being loved by his father. And when you frame it that way, it's devastating.
He gave up everything that he loved to gain the one thing that wouldn't love him.
Awful. And within like this same arc, we have that moment where Kosuke is talking to Hansuke, and he says that I have no one, but he has his eyes closed because he doesn't even have no one right now.
No, it kills me. It kills me.
It's just sad. He's literally in the worst place ever right now, and maybe we'll save it for the end of the episode, but I don't have good feelings about where Kosuke and his arc are headed.
No.
Just based on how things are shaping up right now and what we kind of think is gonna happen.
It's
and
gonna
kind
get
of
worse before it gets better.
yeah, some of the indications that we've seen from Kosuke's character right now in terms of how he is handling or not handling the bad things. Well, we'll save that, but it's going to get really bad, guys. It's going to get really bad. I think I'm going to need many tissue boxes. But moving away from that, there's just a lot going on in these episodes, and I think it's a really good point now to kind of pivot to Yui, because obviously a big part of this is that we are watching Yui completely lose control. Before we really dig into her, I want to read you guys this note that Elle wrote in the notes, and it reads,
Oh no.
shout out to Yui's boobs being the only thing to get shading in the original 271 release.
Listen, it was so apparent. Kimchi even warned us. She was like, hey guys, I'm struggling to meet the deadline this week. I'm going to upload the episode, but it's not going to have any shading, and I'll render it after. And then she uploads it, and nothing has any shading, and then we get to that panel of Yui's boobs, and those are drawn out.
She's not a patron of kimchi. At this time, I believe she was having some family emergencies going on. Yeah. And currently she's got a sick child, so she has not had a lot of time to fully render out episodes. So if you have seen episodes that aren't fully rendered, or you go back and you look at them and they are rendered again, that's why she's kind of trying to retroactively work on what she can, but it requires her getting to I'm so sorry, hold on. It kind of requires her having a little more time for her to get back to those things. In the chat, Nasi just said, the boobs in these eps made me so sad. You know what? We're going to address the elephant in the room, the boobs in the room, if you will.
No.
Because like I said, in these episodes, Yui is fully masking. We see her constantly with that specific smile, and she is very much reducing herself to that hostess and wifey role. And yes, that absolutely includes the way that she dresses. It goes very much back to the way that Yui dresses in such a way to disarm people and to kind of undersell herself, because if people look at her and if they see walking sex, if they see walking boobs, it tends to make her less of a threat to other people, right? Because,
no
misogyny.
No one's concerned about the bimbo, you know?
Exactly. Now, people have made notice of the fact that there are many frames where we see Yui's boobs in really close proximity to like Kosuke's face, or rather the framing where it is her boobs that are looming over him rather than her face. And this does kind of harken back to, the earlier conversation about like him flinching away from the touch. I don't have concrete feelings on where I stand about this right now. I know that there are a lot of people who are very strongly back on team. They think Yui has, touched the boys in the past. I haven't. I'm going to be real with you. I haven't really sat down with this theory and really thought about it enough to decide if I think that this is something or not. I remember in the past I used to feel strongly about it with Noel, and because that was like in regards to the tea. But now that we've learned more about the tea, it makes me like want to reassess a lot of things.
I feel like I do think about this a lot, and I think my perspective on it is I latch on pretty hard to all the times that Kimchi has said that Yui's abuse is very hands off, and the fact that like Noel has always been completely unable to voice what makes Yui so scary. Like, and there's always these running themes of like this person has never even touched you, and that's the rhetoric that we get from like Noel about Kosuke, but Kosuke's so afraid of Noel, and we get that
Right.
same sort of rhetoric around other characters, and it's very different to someone like Gun Kim, right? Where like we see his touch as a threat, whereas with someone like Yui, we see her touch as a as it's not that her touch is threatening, it's that they are scared of her touch, if that makes sense.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying, because it's like it's her proximity.
Right. It's her being nearby. It's the like
It's
this
her
person
playing
can
that role.
Yes. And I think so I think with that, I think all of the kind of sexual imagery with Yui around Kosuke is more a representative of the way that she kind of wields her power, where she absolutely uses her sexuality as a weapon. And
Yes.
I don't think that she has touched either of them, but I think that she's been inappropriate with them, you know?
Right, like her language certainly toes the line.
Exactly. And I think that's part of like she still wields her sexuality as a weapon against even children and her own family, even if she's not physically using it. And what was it that you just said? Because it sparked another thought for me, but I lost
Something
it.
about the proximity
After
or
that.
the role that she plays. What else did I say?
Oh, I was gonna say, and the kind of roles that they fit into with each other, where like
All right.
this kind of hypersexualized mommy role around Kosuke doesn't necessarily mean that she's having a sexual relationship with him, but it takes us back to a very like primally dependent and controlling relationship between the two of them.
I think that makes sense. And I do think I lean more like you do. Like I said, like ever since the tea thing, even before that, I think I had really moved away from that. And I don't think I'd ever put it into words why, but I think you're right. A lot of it has to do with the fact that so much of what Yui does is very hands off. I'm not going to deny that, people who have been drugged and were touched might not remember something like that. And that's the kind of thing that could be a very subconscious feeling that they have. So I'm not going to say that's not possible. However, I don't see how that would be part of Yui's power playbook,
Right. And
It
when we see Yui really only does things that further her goals. Like,
right.
she's not doing all of this because she inherently enjoys it. She's doing all of this as a means to an end, and she
Mhm.
revels in what she can on the way. But
Yes,
she's not
correct.
someone like, for example, Gun Kim or Youngchul Kim, who's gonna take advantage of people because it brings them a personal pleasure. She sometimes derives pleasure out of the things she feels are necessary.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
and it's like even with Noel, we see that I I don't know that I can name an instance where she tormented him just to torment him, you know?
Mhm.
Like, she enjoys tormenting him. She likes the fact that she can do it as often as she does, but that's always a secondary gain.
Right.
And
Um
and so I think with Kosuke, I can't think of what she would get out of that as a
right.
primary gain.
Right. Ren has said, although although she slipped up in recent episodes, I think Yui is a bit too calculated to be extremely hands-on in her bad acts. And yes, I agree. That's part
I
of why
agree.
Yui is so hands-off. She doesn't want anything to be traceable back to her. And I think that's very much probably the same case with Noel. So much of what she does is very psychological. So while like I said, she toes the line in what she says to them, but that's so much more psychological and
Exactly.
getting into your head and making you uncomfortable. Yui saying some of the weird things she said about, Noel growing up so handsome and just like his father, knowing how Yui truly feels about Rand is really interesting to reflect back upon because we still don't have any indication that Yui has ever chosen Rand out of attraction or wanting to be with him.
Yeah.
So I think Yui making those statements about Noel looking like Rand has nothing to do with any kind of improper attraction, but everything more to do with her loathing and detesting and wanting to destroy him.
And I think it hampers that even more when we look at some of her flashbacks in the most recent free episodes, where
Oh,
I think truthfully the most desperate and hands-on she's ever been, probably, other than the night that Noel got sent away,
mhm.
was in those early flashbacks where we see her basically begging Young Chul Kim to advocate for her and be in her corner. And then we get right after that the flashbacks of the start of her relationship with Rand. The sequence starts with Yui overhearing her father's grief at the loss of his son, and that all the disparaging remarks about how the neither of the daughters could possibly take it. He'll lose the family name, and
Fully misogynist, by the way.
oh, absolutely. Where Hansuke's mother is brilliant but too soft, and Yui is not right in the head. She's just a pretty face. She has a weak mind that she needs. She's on and off meds to control her mood swings. She never listens. She's always trying to defy him. His son's probably dead because she was too incompetent to find him and keep him alive. And
I
she's
want to fight
overhearing.
this man.
I know. She's overhearing all of this, clearly distressed because she already has the goal of wanting to take over the company, and she's hearing her father be like, my crazy incompetent youngest daughter, who I kind of wish didn't exist, it sounds like,
At the funeral,
at
mind
the
you.
funeral. And so she's overhearing all of this, and then she hears somebody bring up the Mukayoshi, and I think this is the exact moment where she started calculating the beginnings of this whole long game plan.
Can
Because
we pause for just one moment? Because
yeah,
I feel like we just deserve a little, just a little bit, a little bit of clappy claps, because we've been writing really hard for this Mukoyoshi theory for such a long time,
oh yeah, and
and
having the word in the comic.
just having like the actual verbatim confirmation, even like if we never needed it, even if I had literally made a post on Reddit that was literally like, guys, that Mukoyoshi theory, it's absolutely true. Let me tell you why. And then just like a couple weeks later, Kimchi drops this. I'm like, yo, what did I say? Like, I know we did not coin the Mukoyoshi theory. Forever, thank you, Webtoon theory for that. However, even despite that theory existing, it's been a really long ride getting people on board with it. And even still, it's really hard to convince people of how the Mukoyoshi theory, how the Mukoyoshi concept works.
And how much it impacts the story.
Right. And how, it's no longer, because I want to, let me take this moment to note that once Rand is married into that family, it is no longer about the family name because Rand has that family name, the moment we learn that Kosuke is born out of wedlock and he's not Rand's son, that immediately disqualifies him. Noel being born out of wedlock does not matter in the same way because he's still Rand's blood. It's not that, we need a new Hirahara. Rand is the Hirahara. That's the thing. He's adopted. He's treated like a Hirahara. He is elevated as a Hirahara higher than Yui is. It's not that Yui matters. Or Yui doesn't really matter in this instance. Rand does. And that's what has been the important thing of trying to get people to understand why, the Mukoyoshi theory was true and why we needed to, accept that in order to understand why Yui is like this and why she treats characters the way she does, because we'll always harken back to the early days and why is Yui beefing with teenagers, which is one of my favorite things ever. And two, understanding why Kosuke being the real bastard, they're both, but why Kosuke not being Rand's son matters so much.
Yes.
Anyway,
absolutely.
carrying on. So, she hears this and she's starting her scheme.
And she starts planning. And there's always been a lot of debate of how exactly did Rand and Yui happen? How far did the plan go? And I think these panels give us a good indication that that's the moment that the plan started to come in motion. And she's looking and when he says who would even want to marry someone, who could I even marry you off to? Who would take her? She in her head is kind of thinking the same thing, but in a different way. It was who can I get for this plan? And under those panels, they're looking at Rand grieving at the funeral as well.
Mm-hmm.
So she starts formulating the Mukoyoshi plan, but obviously she wouldn't really want that. So she goes to Youngchul and she asks for his support in the succession. He's kind of like, I appreciate you having the initiative to come to me, but why should I care? Basically, why should I support? Show me that there's some reason that I should put you ahead. And that could mean anything, but with the way that it's framed, we see it from Youngchul's point of view, where he's looking down at Yui. She's kind of she's sitting, but she looks almost on her knees looking up at him in a way that is gross, to say the least, and incriminating. And over that same panel, he asks if she minds if he sits next to her. And we've had the theory for a while that Kosuke is potentially Youngchul's son. And that Yui...
My favorite way to harass everybody in the server is to remind people that if Kosuke is Youngchul's son, like we've been theorizing, that makes him Songchul's uncle. And nobody likes that for some reason.
For some reason, they all hate that.
Because at some point in time, before this episode dropped, at some point in time, and I feel like maybe we discussed it on the pod, and I cannot remember, but at some point in time it occurred to us that there is a far worse possibility than Gun for being Kosuke's father.
Which is
And
awful.
and we didn't like it, and at first it was kind of like a what if, but more and more it started becoming something where it's like, no, what if? And the moment that I realized it would make him Kosuke Songchol's uncle, I don't know why, but that's what sealed the deal for me. And that means Gun is his brother. And that is
Oh,
a fate
God.
far worse than Songchol. Okay?
Oh, that's awful.
Gun is far worse than Songchol. But okay, so back to your point.
Yeah, so it gives the impression that this was probably Yui's most desperate act, because she's sitting here, she has no path ahead of her, she has no one in her corner, she has no support. Her only hope is to either get this man's endorsement or get a husband that her father likes more than her sister's husband, which both she and her father kind of seem to have this impression that that's going to be hard, and also Yui doesn't want that, right? She wants to be leading the company by herself anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So this is likely her most desperate act. And then the next one
Actually,
is
before we move on to that,
yeah,
or do we want to cycle back to this? Because I actually kind of want to break this down a little bit, if you don't mind.
yeah, go for it.
Okay, because I think there are some really interesting things to note here. Because obviously, like you said, we can read into this a few ways, but it's really clear Yui knows what she's walking into. Young Chol has a reputation, and it's the kind of thing that is an open secret, This is before the scandal that has caused him to step down because he's postponing his retirement. And she walks in here. We talk a lot about your color theory, and I'm calling upon it once again because, as we know, in the color theory, colors tend to represent things that are remembered most strongly or are most strongly associated with a memory. This entire flashback is largely black and white, aside from, in some cases, eyes. That part where she's listening to her father degrade her, basically, as she's got the red spotlight on her. But when we reach Young Chol's office, we see the red couch and her dress. Obviously, we've only seen her in black so far because she's been in her morning clothes. And we can't judge her attire entirely based off of this, right? Because a lot of people like to say that based off of this, Yui dressed very conservatively. But it's still a very conservative dress, even for, for funeral standards, especially compared to the Yui that we know now. Obviously, the Yui we know now is many decades in the future and has grown a lot, but I think it's really interesting to note that the two versions of Yui that we are given are, this dress, which is very prim and proper, very clean cut. And we cut to what she looks like in Young Chol's office. And I'm not saying I think that this is who Yui is. I think this is when Yui learns to start weaponizing her sexuality. Because
Yeah,
now
I
she's in a
agree.
very clingy bodycon type of dress. She's showing far more skin. Her hair is out of her proper braid. She's wearing it in kind of this loose ponytail.
And it's
She
kind of
knows what she's doing.
right, and it's still like there's still enough of kind of a benefit of the doubt in it where like, was she going with the intention of doing this? Maybe not, but she potentially went in kind of giving herself a little bit of support in that way
Right.
where like it's
Maybe if
still
she
on
walks in
fire.
looking pretty, Young Chol's going to be willing to sit
Exactly.
down and talk to her.
Exactly. It looks like she dressed pretty for him without
Mm-hmm.
dressing like sexy for him.
But I think she also knows the risks of what she's doing as well.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Yui was delusional walking into this. And I think this is an important conversation because we know it's made very clear that some kind of assault takes place. Again, that couch is also colored and it's red. Like it's not difficult to fathom what this means. Whether or not it is, even if it was something she was anticipating, it can still be very traumatic, because what I want to get at
Absolutely.
is, even if this was something that Yui had pep talked to herself, and this is something that I called back to in the thread when this first dropped, because we see this mentality when she speaks to Alyssa after her own assault after meeting Gun Kim's friends. And she tells her, or I made this up in my head. She doesn't tell her this, but I feel like this is what she tells Alyssa. Because Alyssa says the whole thing about how it's just
It's
a
just
job.
business.
It's just business. And I feel like she has to have gotten this from Yui. Or, she could arrive to her own conclusions, but I feel like this is a very similar moment for Yui. She is
Or at least
having,
the attitude is at least supported by
yes,
Yui. And it's very like, this is like, if Yui walked into this room hyping herself into this could happen,
mhm,
it would likely be a very, this is a necessary evil, especially
exactly.
for someone like Yui at that age, who's already so resentful and is fighting so hard, and is at the start of a very long journey. And she's going to Youngchul basically with the intention of not having to take a husband. So it's like,
Mhm,
it was probably like it would be great if this is not how it goes, but I understand the risks. I need this endorsement. There's no other way. And if I get through this one time, that's it.
right. And
But
it's
that doesn't
such,
make it less traumatic.
exactly. And you're right. And like that's what I'm getting at, is like with Alyssa, she's got that same attitude. Is this is something that you have to do in order to get somewhere. But that didn't make it less traumatic for her. And I think
Right.
that's what this is with Yui, because I feel like, because Yui is such a hated character, there's probably going to be those takes that are, well, what if she actually wanted it because blah, 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 that's how women get ahead. Do you think that the women who do these things to get ahead always enjoy doing that in order to get ahead? Do you not feel like people who find themselves in positions where they feel like the only option they have is to use their body to get ahead don't resent that they feel like that's the only thing they can do? And that's kind of what I want to get here, is we know Yui has such a deep resentment of the patriarchy, and clearly it stems from her deeply misogynistic father, but it also clearly stems from the system of patriarchy and the system that has been designed so that she felt like she was in a position that she could only do this. Her choices, as she sees it, are apparently marry somebody who is better than her sister's husband, beg the chairman who comes at the risk of maybe assaulting her, and if she performs good enough, maybe he will give her the recommendation that she needs.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think this is very important to outline, because once again, I know how fandom feels about Yui, and I know how it's very easy to hate on her or to say she got what she deserved. But this is why she is such an angry, resentful person.
Right. And
Again,
this
I'm
person
not
with
saying,
Yui hadn't done anything. Well, okay, she might have killed her
right.
brother, but other than that, and before
Although,
that, she hadn't done anything.
right, and to be clear, we don't have any indication that she actually killed her brother.
No, I
We
just
don't
said
have,
might have because it's possible, and
right,
people could be like,
right,
well, what if she killed her brother? Okay, she might have killed her brother. We can gloss over
right.
that for this sake.
I leave the possibility open, but I also leave everybody to remember that her father is speaking of her as somebody who is a broken thing who can't be trusted, and we have to
Mm-hmm.
wonder, did he ever even get her the help that she needed? What if what if she was doing the things that the paramedics asked her to do, but it was too late? What if she had, we don't know what is actually wrong with Yui, but from the way that he describes her sometimes, it makes us wonder, does she have some kind of illness where she just has some kinds of episodes? And could she have been having an episode where she couldn't assist him or something? This is why we've wanted to do an episode where we can just sit and discuss things, because we start getting into this and it's like, yes, maybe she did kill her brother because she wants to have all the power, or maybe she never had that intention, but now that he's gone, she sees a possibility.
Yeah.
And then maybe this is what happened and this is how it could have happened, and it's just everything's branching off.
Right. And it's like, even if she did kill her brother, which obviously is a big deal, I'm not saying that it's not, but that still, she wouldn't have been motivated to do that without all of this patriarchy and family oppression coming down on her beforehand. So
Correct.
this is still not the version of Yui who has been abusing a bunch of children. That comes years and years later. Where this is her villain origin right here. So she's still I would say that this is still not a girl who deserves to have her only options be to sleep with crusty old Young-chul Kim, or to take a husband that she doesn't want, or to lose everything in her family inheritance.
Right. And because I feel like we need to go ahead and say it, disclaimer, we are not saying that because Yui endured this stuff, she deserves to be mean and horrible to children and kill people. That is not what we're saying. Please understand. Anyway, carrying on. Right. But anyway, yeah, I feel like that's a very interesting flashback, because it's like you said, it really gives us a lot of indication of things. Is this a moment that Kosuke is conceived? Did this become a recurring thing even? Because like you said, in her mind,
or did she have to keep proving her worth to him?
Did he blackmail her and play that whole, oh, you didn't prove me enough, or I would hate to have to tell your father about this,
Mm-hmm.
It sets up a lot of gross possibilities.
It does. And like you're saying, this is probably the first time that she used this as kind of a weapon, and it was likely through you will probably, if I go in there asking for his support, this is probably going to happen. Not even I'm going to use this to get it. It's this is going to be required of me once I walk in this office. But then, whether she had to do it multiple times to stay on his good side, or if one time was enough, she probably got on his good side and had someone in her corner for the first time and realized that this is a useful weapon. And then, now we get into some of the little bit of fast passy spoilers. But then when we get
close your ears.
Close your ears. But then a couple episodes later, we get the flashbacks from Rand's point of view of the start of their affair, and we get this extremely sensual Yui, and he says that she basically took advantage of his grief in a moment of weakness to start the affair, and then immediately after, there's a Kosuke conceived. So that's likely her second moment of desperation, where she's got some sort of support from Young-chul Kim at this point, probably through using her sexuality to gain his favor, which is not even her thinking outside the box. That's his minimum requirement. But
she did spot Rand at the funeral. So
yes, and she spotted him
kind of already had her eyes on this.
She had him in mind, and then we see her still need something else. For some reason, she still needs the Mukiyoshi. Probably they're not gonna. It probably becomes a if Yui had a husband, we'd go with Yui, but we can't because there's no man, and I'm not putting a woman in charge, kind of thing. But she's a contender now, but it's not in there. And
And I think the timeline gets very interesting here, right? We don't have full details on things, but I would like to point out that our timeline gets very interesting because we don't know at what point Young Chol, the controversy about his sexual assault comes out, but we do have to wonder if any of that played in with her taking advantage of Rand's grief.
Mm-hmm. We see that Yui still needs some more push, and that's when she starts going after Rand, seeing him for the first time at the funeral, devising the idea, and we see this shift where when she's in Young Chol's office, we get this impression that she's walked in with the idea that this is a possibility, but she's not overly sexual, she's not overly sensual, she's not gunning for it. It's basically, I am prepared to fill this demand if it's necessary. Whereas with Rand, we get the impression that she is an aggressor in this, and she's to some degree taking advantage of his grief and using her sexuality as a true weapon for the first time. And these are both incredibly desperate moments from Yui. If she doesn't get either of these things, there's no life ahead of her. There's no plan B. There's nothing else for her. And she hasn't really used this before, and she has no other power. She has no other options. She's at basically the bottom of the corporate power struggle, and she has nothing else to use.
And it's very interesting that she ends up going for Rand because, as we know, Rand is in the position he is because of Koichi. Koichi is the one who acquired his firm and got him an executive position. We still have questions, right, about whatever happened to the relationship with Koichi and Rand. And in the past, I had thought, I feel like maybe something bad happened here because it felt very ominous, especially when, I posited the question, if Koichi was one of those very important people to Rand, why does Noel not carry that name? But now that we're looking at this timeline and we're seeing that Yui basically targeted him from the funeral, took advantage of his grief, pounced really quickly, led to this affair. First off, we can now see why he would not give Noel a name that, is connected to all of this. But also, I'm starting to feel like maybe Koichi was not a bad person, like we had contemplated about. And that it is his connection to all of this, and especially to Yui, who, in a way, Rand views as ruining his life, even though I think Rand probably objectively acknowledges he ruined his own life. I'm going to give him that credit. But anyway, I think it is very interesting that Yui went for Rand because her father probably had some favor for him already. If he was given an executive position, it wasn't just because Koichi, future heir soon to take over, had that much pull. I think that probably had a lot of weight, and because of that, his father liked him because clearly Koichi was the golden boy. His father seems to have held him in such high regard. And if you have the endorsement of Koichi, it's probably like a golden ticket. So, because we've questioned before, right? Did Yui go for Rand? Was there ever any hint of attraction between them? Did she ever have feelings for him? And I still feel very strongly that it was never like that. Yui knew.
I think this is even more evidence because she overhears this talk. She goes through listening to her father say everything bad he thinks about her and that she could never inherit the company, that she'd run into the ground. Then she hears them enter the Mukiyoshi idea, and Rand is right in that frame. And that indicates to me that the first time she ever thought about that man
Yep.
was, is
Can
he
I
the one
use
to
him?
use?
Yes, I think so too. Like, this has shown us that Rand was an opportunity to her. He was Koichi's best friend. He's got this executive position already. He's probably already favored by her father. Now he's in this position of grief, and she's such a really pretty woman who has learned how to wield her sexuality. And here's the thing, right? I think the Hiraharas have to have known that he was married. There's no way. Like,
He
because
was going to
they
bring
had to
this
help
with
him.
him.
Right. They had to help him with his paperwork. Like, even if Yui didn't know, she would have found out. But she was also like Koichi's brother, so she probably learned things from him. I think, because something that I was thinking about as I was rereading these episodes was when she was talking to Kosuke. And Kosuke was talking about, like his essentially, talking about his own resentment towards his father for going out and making this other family. And we, semantics wise, we can agree that in a sense, Rand did step out and start another family in the sense that he returned to Nessa and, they had a kid out of wedlock. That's a family. But Yui wise, talking, like, okay, she does say that he betrayed her, and that counts. He married into the family, and then he went back to his, first wife. Still can't get over that, by the way. And they had a child together. But Yui still talks in this sense like Nessa never was there / didn't matter. And that's probably her mentality about the whole thing, but it's just very fascinating to me because it still implies to Kosuke that Nessa was the interloper and
Right.
not that it
Nessa
was
swooped in.
Yui.
Right. Where, like, I don't know for sure if Yui herself would have really been aware that Rand was married because Nessa wasn't actually with them. She wasn't the one who was friends with him. It was her brother. She probably wasn't super close with any of the family,
But would she
considering
have
the
actually
dynamic.
cared
But
when
but I doubt that
he's
she
her
would have
golden
cared.
ticket?
And
Right.
she probably found out, right? Like, but she's
Mhm.
already set her sights on this. She's decided he's her best bet. She does
Because who's
not
going to be
care.
better than him?
Right.
And where would she find someone better than him?
She's got way more use for him than that woman ever could.
Honestly, in her view, yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to take her further.
Right.
Like,
But
what's this woman want to do? Settle down? Have a family? Yui has her sights set on things so much greater, and
so much
she
more
can
important.
help him be so much greater. That's a joke because Yui doesn't want him to be.
Yeah,
I'm still thinking that Yui was still banking on the fact that he's still a foreigner. I'm the real Hirahara, so even if this is a Mukoyoshi thing, being a
which
Hirahara is
further
still gonna buy her something, right?
right. Which further
Right?
goes along the like, I've got more important uses for this man, and it's gotta be him, because how many other random Icelandic orphans are running around the Hirahara company?
Like, oh, God, we go back and forth, right, between talking so much shit on Rand and like talking about what a tragic character he is, and
Rand,
he never stood a chance.
yeah, Rand's thing is that Rand has very much been set up, and his mistake was taking the bait.
Exactly. And we do still have questions about the seduction, and was it simply a moment of weakness and he caved, or was there anything else? Like, I'm not saying that I think there's more to the story, because I will accept Rand being a fucking scoundrel who had that moment of weakness and caved. But we still have those parallels that Rand and Noel are running away from their problems in hopes that it will protect the people they love. And like I was saying earlier, timeline-wise, we don't know quite how this is fitting, but is it possible that Yui used what happened to her with Youngchul as, a way to kind of appeal to Rand's kindness and the part of him that wants to extend help? Because remember, this is a thing that he's talked to Shanae in the past about. Be careful of those really good traits of yours, because those are the things that people will take advantage of. And it's very easy for us to connect that back to Yui and the possibility that she was able to manipulate him and take advantage of him because of these good traits of him, and believing things that were not necessarily true, or were true but were, like you said, a setup and a means to trap him.
And
But
this is so. This signals to me, kind of tying it back to the original segue of how we got here. This signals to me the shift that Yui is able to start taking towards other methods of manipulation, where like the incident with Youngchul and the start of the affair with Rand, she's using her body because it's the only weapon she has, and she has to.
Correct.
Like, she doesn't have another option. And as soon as she has something, which if she did use what happened with Youngchul as a bit of a manipulation tactic with Rand, she's gained that power from that initial instance of using her body as a weapon. She didn't have that before. Now she has something to be able to weaponize. It's just not enough on its own, potentially. And the more she builds, the more we can assume that she moved towards that hands-off psychological manipulation that is her preferred style, and that she's probably not going to go back to using her own body unless she absolutely has to. And we see that also with, like, we've theorized that on the night that Noel got taken away, that Yui, and that was also a moment of strong desperation. And where it takes her was probably a slap. It seems like that's as far as it went. So for her, she resorts to direct means only when there's nothing else that she can use.
Right. And like you said, when it's clearly out of desperation. For her, like, that desperate time with Noel and Kosuke was she needed Noel out of the picture in a way that would work to her advantage, where he was technically okay, but he wasn't in her hair. And so, because obviously we feel like there was a fight that night, or a fight was staged that night. And obviously it was probably something she was trying to set up, and when it wasn't working out the way that she was planning for it to, like you said, she became desperate enough that she had to intervene. Right, like, so to answer that far earlier question, yeah, she's just so hands off that I can't see why she would ever be hands on about something that doesn't directly benefit her.
Right. I struggle to see scenarios where she gains more personally or in power from being hands-on than from being hands-off, unless it's a situation like the ones that we're talking about where we know that she's been hands-on, which always have the running thread of she had nothing else to use. It's always out of desperation rather than some form of pleasure or enjoyment. And we get the strong impression that every time that she's been hands-on, she hasn't enjoyed it.
Interestingly, to that point, and I feel like this might be slightly tangential, and I'm sorry about that, but we do see that minor altercation between Yui and Rand outside of the dining room. And this is very, I hate that I keep saying this is very interesting to me. I'm sorry for being a broken record. But this reads very interesting to me because there are parts of fandom who took this as proof that Yui has been very abusive in the relationship with Rand. However, I think that Yui being hands-on is something that is only done when Rand is acting out, which is very rare. We know that Rand is only now starting to act out. Now that he has kind of made these preparations with Yujing, now that he's working on, whatever he's working on, now that he's really starting, like, ever since that Christmas party where it's starting to feel like he's kind of squaring things away and finalizing things, now it's starting to feel that way.
Right, and again, we see that same thread where she's desperate. She's unraveling. She's unraveling already. She's losing control of things. She's grasping for it back. And then Rand, who has been so defeated and complicit for years, is suddenly acting out in front of their guests.
Right. So I get the feeling that this is not a running thread throughout the relationship. I think Yui's abuse towards Rand has always been emotional and, psychological. I think it has always been more in the vein of withholding his children from him and boxing him into a corner and kind of being like, oh, you wanted this role that I can't have? You're going to have it, and it's going to be the only thing you have, and you're going to be miserable in it. Again, I'm not going to deny the possibility that she has been physical towards him at other times, but again,
she might have been.
Right. It just doesn't feel like it is a running thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's something that happens all the time.
Oh yeah. It's possible that she's been hands-on before, but like you said, I don't think it's recurring. I think it would only be in these moments of extreme desperation, and that her preferred method, as Kimchi said, is she likes to keep her hands clean. So any situation where she can keep her hands clean, I think she's going to. And I think she's starting with like the lowest level intensity hands-on intervention that she can. And so it's just these situations where she's really got nothing else she can do that it gets bad.
Right. I agree. I gotta say, listen, I'm loving watching Yui unravel. It's terrifying. Speaking of terrifying, we have not actually touched on this, but I have to say that from the moment Kosuke and Hansuke showed up for the dinner, the atmosphere was so thick and horrible. Like, once Kosuke, or why do I keep saying this? Once Hansuke returned to the table, oh my god, it was agonizing. It was awful. Which we might as well just discuss Hansuke and the fact that Hansuke is there at all.
Oh yeah. Because he showed up in the first place.
Oh my god. The moment, okay, like,
and this
it was
like,
bad enough. Oh, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, this is Hansuke stepping himself onto the chessboard. Like, poor Hansuke was not on it before, and boy, is he on it now.
And, okay, and like, just to harken back to what we were talking about earlier, is he's only doing this out of love and affection for Kosuke, who doesn't believe in any of the love and affection, who thinks that he is just making fun of him and laughing behind his back and whispering tee hee 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 hee
I know,
and making fun of him. And he is putting his neck on the line and joining the chessboard and literally risking everything.
I know,
for Kosuke.
Watching Hansuke say that, his mother has cut ties with everyone, that he considers Kosuke the only family that he has left, telling his mother that the reason that he's at the Hirahara estate is because he tagged along with Kosuke, and that he wants to ask her more about what's wrong with the family. In the same arc where Kosuke says that I bet you guys talk all the time behind my back, you and everyone else, I'm gonna go have dinner with my family because where else do I have to go? I have no one. While Hansuke is coming to this dinner and facing Yui's wrath and walking straight onto this chessboard of doom because he can't leave Kosuke alone.
It hurts. It is so devastating. And like, he's already risked his career for Kosuke once. And As we learn, it is not a secret. Like I said, the entire atmosphere is just, it's cloying, it is thick, it is so uncomfortable. Those episodes were so uncomfortable to read, and even rereading them, they were incredibly uncomfortable because like we've got the Hiraharas sitting on one side of the table. We have the Kims on the other side. Kosuke or Hansuke isn't even meant to be there. He's just a tag along. Yui is playing hostess, but she's clearly not happy about Hansuke being there. And she's not happy about Hansuke, period. The stunts that he pulled at the hospital have left a lasting impression upon her. And even though she's telling him, oh, I'm so sorry for what happened at the hospital. I understand. You were just looking out for him. Like,
She's angry. She's mad about it.
she's out for your blood, babes. You're not safe.
And this is
I'm
the
so
first time,
sorry. You're not safe.
and this is the first time we really see Hansuke like drop his naivety and his kind of happy-go-luckiness, where he's like, he knows. He knows that Yui is drugging her son. He knows that he and Kosuke are unsafe. He knows that Yui is out for him. He is like, he knows that she's threatening his license. He said she's brought it up twice. She's gonna do it. I just don't know how. He's not even like she might do it. He's like, she's gonna do it. She's gonna end my career. I just don't know how it's going to happen. He's terrified to eat anything, and when she serves him that donut, I know that we in the we had some kind of funny polls going at the end of that week where he got served, where like you're Hansuke, do you eat the donut, not eat the like, do you accept your fate and eat a drug donut, or do you endure Yui's wrath?
No
but
one wants to endure Yui's wrath.
No, but he himself realizes that even if it means getting drugged, he needs her off of his back because she's going to end him. And he eats what he thinks is a severely contaminated donut prepared just for him.
There's a lot that is terrifying about Yui's interrogation of Hansuke, right? Part of it is she's heavily masked for a lot of it. But she opens her eyes when she asks, since you mentioned it, was it hard becoming a doctor?
Right.
What was the journey like? I've always been curious.
She's
And
confessing.
we know, yes, we know it was incredibly difficult for Hansuke to get placed. And it's our Elle and I and other people who subscribe to this belief that Yui probably forced her sister completely out of anything to do with the company by holding Hansuke's career hostage. And this is part of why she and her sister have nothing. I mean, there's probably, we don't know when the cutoff actually happened, but this probably had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, this was probably the final straw where, like,
yes,
she was still, like, she had probably been sort of stepping down, but she was still there, and Yui was like, I want her out with no chance of returning, and the way was by holding her son hostage, basically. Or if it happened before that, a reminder that Yui holds all the power, Yui holds all the cards, and she had something that she needed her sister to do, and that was the negotiation. Was, if Hansuke wants a life of his own, you're gonna fall in line.
correct.
And like,
and
this is
like,
go on. Oh yeah, and like this, her throwing this into the conversation, and the way that, like you said, the way that she does it, where she starts by asking him how hard it was to become
and
a
her
doctor.
eyes being open, the way she's like just posing, holding, casually holding her phone to her chin and just looking at him with this very uncomfortable smile. Like, she is lording it. Like you said, it is a confession. I don't know if Hansuke completely clocks that because he is so terrified that she's going to
Right.
end his career. But
And he's
she's
only
also
just got
admitting, right, she's openly admitting he only has the career that he does.
She let him have it.
Exactly.
And
then
he gave it to him, and she can take it away just as easily.
Right. And then she goes on to talk about her sister and how hard it was for her too. All the studying and the late hours and how many hours she was pulling. And when she was home, I'd frequently see her crying, if not have her face buried in her notes and textbooks. And she's like, she looks so giddy. Her hands are clasped together in front of her face. Her eyes are closed and she's got like this giddy grin on her face. The payoff must be great. Otherwise, people wouldn't be subjecting themselves to such torture. Like, she's really outlining for Hansuke what he went through. Not just, the fact that she held his career hostage, which she did, but all of the other effort and work that he had to put in order to get there. But these two panels stood out so much to me. Obviously, the first one, because like you said, that's a confession. It's the open eyes. It's the way that she's looking directly at him. But that second one, because of how she's just looking at him, like the way that she's just clasping her hands together and looks gleeful about the torture that her sister went through. Like, damn, Yui. We know you're crazy, but girl.
And this is where this is where we see some of the vindictiveness that she does have come in. We're like, did she do any of the career interfering because it was going to just be personally pleasurable to see her sister and her family all fail at their careers? No. She wouldn't have done it without gain, but did she take pleasure in watching them all suffer? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Established that for you. She found that way.
I just got robot from you.
Sorry.
If you want to say that statement again.
Yep. How am I now?
You're good now.
Okay.
I don't want you to keep going and then have to redo
sorry.
all this.
Yep. We're all good. I had to go turn the porch light on and I forgot. Okay. Now we're good. Oh my god. I'm sorry, guys. The robot is gone. Okay. And especially for Yui, who has also suffered to get where she is, I think, like you said, it's not that she necessarily wants to make people suffer. She wants people to suffer for her own gain, right?
Yeah.
But like you said, don't keep it in. She enjoys it when she has the opportunity to, but she doesn't go out of her way for it, really.
Yes.
But if she gets to enjoy it, by God, she's gonna enjoy it. And it's just, Yui, I don't know what to say about you, girl. Like, if I say the things I want to, people are gonna accuse me of being a Yui defender, but you just make a really fascinating antagonist. Like, she's just so well crafted in a way that makes her so easy to understand and really view the way that we do.
No, that's exactly what it is. And again, like, at the point that she's at, the things that we're talking about, she's dragging her son. She's abusing children. She's getting people locked away. She may or may not have killed people. At this point, I think she's definitely killed at least 2 people, maybe 3, at least. I'd say 2 confirmed, 3rd maybe, probably more. She's helping run a sex trafficking ring, like, willingly. There's so much awful that this woman is doing.
Right.
Like, no, I don't like her or think that any of this is justified at this point. Like, she's a villain.
But it's so fascinating to see how her own struggles with misogyny and people not believing in her and not giving her the opportunity is what led her here.
Right.
And again,
you can track who she is, and you can empathize with the young girl that she once was and how
Mhm.
that girl became who she is now.
And again, one of these days we're just going to sit down and like have a whole episode where we just talk about this again. It makes
That part too.
the it makes the future trajectory of Noel going on his own anti-hero arc all the more fascinating, because we are going to get to see how he ends up on a similar path and where those paths diverge.
Right, we're
Where
basically seeing
Yui
the alternate ending of Yui's story.
Exactly, where Yui never took the exit route and she just saw, I'm going to stay with my abusers and I'm going to maintain the status quo because that's what allows me to maintain the power that I still have, as opposed to taking the exit and realizing none of this is actually worth it and none of this is actually doing anything. Because in Yui's mind, it's she does have power. She does wield power and it feels good to lord it over people. But we can't get too deep into that because we will literally never shut up about Yui. That's a problem. She's such a great
Yeah.
character to delve into, but
We should do, like, now that we've gotten more of her backstory and we're really getting into the Noel anti-arc, we
Yui
should do it.
2.0.
We should do a Yui and Noel mirrors Yui 2.0.
Oh my god, yes. I don't think we've ever done an actual Yui and Noel
No,
mirrors
we just
episode
mentioned it
itself.
briefly.
So yeah, somebody write that down for us so that I can add it to the list.
Anyone with access to the staff channels, please pop it in the Tea with Trashellie thread.
Yes, please. But
Okay.
yeah, so Hansuke really knows everything is in jeopardy, and it's putting him at odds with our girl Yujing, who is
Mhm.
yet another problematic fave, is she not?
I
We've
I was gonna say I really love this series of episodes in particular for showing off that if you haven't watched our Yujing and Meg episode, this is a
yes.
great callback to it, but showing off that foiling of Yui and some of the ways that Yujing is not this like super beacon of moral righteous justice that we sometimes can think of
Want
her
her to
as
be.
and want her to be. But in this episode, Hansuke is panicked. Hansuke and Kosuke are walking into an incredibly dangerous situation, and Hansuke's like, "I'm trying to basically not go. Like, I don't want to go. I'm trying to convince us to stay home." And Yujin goes, "No, I need you to go. I need you
Oh,
to walk into this dangerous situation that you're both terrified of because I need the evidence that you can bring me for my article." Where she's not only willing to put them in harm's way, but is accepting the possible collateral damage. And obviously, once Hansuke calls her after the event and is like, "I just ate a donut that I think might be poisoned," she's like, "Okay, like I'll stay on the line with you. Um, how fast might it act? Are you feeling it?" And he's like, "I'm throwing it up." And she's like, "What happened?" And there is some genuine concern here, but she
but it's the
threw them
fact
into
that
that
she
lion's
pushed
den.
them. Right. And it's all for the sake of the article. And I get it. We get it. This is really big. She needs this expose. She needs the proof of any kinds of drugs and drugging. She needs far more evidence than what they currently have. But she is also asking them to risk themselves. She didn't seem to think that Hansuke was in danger. It's only Kosuke that she thought. And even then she's like, do you really think that they're gonna drug him at a party full of people?
All right,
And
she's like,
to
"It's
be
probably going to be fine."
right, and to be fair, I agreed with that. But that doesn't deny that this is still going to be a stressful and traumatic situation for him
Right, and
and Kosuke.
part of her push is like, "I need samples of the food." But
Right.
she's like, "I don't think they're gonna drug you two in front of all those people. But if
But
they
get
do,
me food
that would be great
anyway.
for me."
Right, right. And we have never shut up about Eugene being very self-serving. I was literally just talking about this earlier today. That is such a basic tenet of Eugeni's character. She's incredibly self-serving. She gets very fixated on what she's doing and what she needs and her own needs at the expense of others. You know, it's what makes her a very fascinating character, and she has a lot of those similarities with with Yui. It's just how they go about doing things and what they want overall is where things start to divert a little bit. But even when we consider, like, while Eugene's article benefits everybody, she's still doing it for her own reasons. It's for her own desires. Like,
it's not just out of the goodness and morality of her heart. We're
right.
lucky that what she wants is ultimately also moral, but that's similar to Yui taking pleasure in suffering as a secondary gain of things that she feels that she needs to do to maintain her power. Eugene's moral righteousness is kind of a secondary gain of her self-serving interests.
Correct. And it, you know, we've kind of always known that she's going to do whatever it takes for this expose, but it really starts to make us wonder just how far things are going to go. Because we also know the relationship she has with Kosuke is one where she does want to see him suffer. And this is where it's a little, you know, much like Yui, is, you know, Eugene's, I mean, in a way, she sometimes goes a little out of her way, but not that far out of the way. She likes to watch Kosuke suffer.
Yeah.
He's somebody that she cared deeply about, and I think she still does care about him, but she also carries so much resentment because she cares and because she feels hurt and betrayed by him that she likes his suffering. So if he has to suffer for her gains, she's gonna enjoy it. It's not gonna deter her. It's Hansuke who suffered that gives her pause. If it was only Kosuke who was suffering at this party, I don't think Eugene would care.
No, exactly.
If he was getting drugged again, you know, for her it would be like, you know, it's a necessary evil. We need this so that we have evidence.
Right. And it's like,
it's only the fact that Hansuke was getting threatened.
right, that's where
And
she started to care. And like, do I think that in the long, like, similar to like in the long run, I don't think Eugene wants Kosuke to suffer forever. Like, she
oh right,
also
yeah.
wants him to be his own person again and like find joy and ultimately be their friend again, because that's what she's so mad at him about. Is
Exactly.
that similar to Noel? She's so upset that he shut down everything that was good about himself to become this Yui slave. Um, Similar to that, I don't think she wants him to continue being drugged, and I think that she doesn't like that he's being drugged, but her desire for that evidence and the purpose it serves for her is so much greater than any want of hers to have him not be drugged.
And it's just it's just very interesting how much she's willing to brush off at first. You know, when Hansuke's telling her, like, she knows that I took his blood. She's, you know, my career is in jeopardy. Like, she's just so blasé about it at first, like, oh, blah blah. And it's like, Eugene, you gotta take this shit more seriously, babes. What are you gonna do when,
Right.
like, your little informant can't be an informant anymore?
And especially considering that, like, she absolutely knows how high the stakes are in this. She's good friends with Rand of all people. She's the one who started this. She, like, if the college incident is what we think it is, it's someone is dead who was close to her because of this family. Like, she knows the stakes. But it's still so much lower for her that she's very willing to, like you said, be nonchalant and brush it off until you really hit something where she's like, oh.
Right. And, you know, I think that's one of those things is Eugene clearly has tunnel vision about the things that she works on. And like you were saying with Kosuke, like, I don't think she wants him to suffer long term. And I think she may even have one of those moments of reckoning like Noel will have in the future where, like, she kind of looks back and she realizes just how much Kosuke has been suffering. call back to what I was talking about earlier when I think things are going to get way, 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 way worse for Kosuke. But again, we will save that for the end of the episode. But things are also possibly going to get worse for Eugene things are going to get worse for Kosuke. Eugene is not very implicated in this, but she's been to the coroner. Why am I blanking on this?
Yeah, coroner's office.
Okay, thank God. She's been to the coroner's office. They have the cause of death for the homeless person. And unfortunately, it was the food that they gave him. There were drugs that were obviously meant for Kosuke. And that poor man just fell asleep and he never woke back up. But the problem is there's probably CCTV all over the place because that's the nature of these cities. And it's very likely, and there's, at the very least, the girl who took the food can acknowledge who gave the food. CCTV can identify him or, help identify him. Hansuke is in a very difficult position because what is he going to do? Say, oh, these are my friend's leftovers who came from his mom who's been poisoning him. Eugene has already straight up said that we can't even take this to the police because it's just going to get somebody put in jail. I'm scared for Hansuke. Like, I used to be scared because he's going to end up jobless, but now I'm just scared for him, period.
Just in general, he currently has a lot to lose for a fight that he doesn't really have personal stake in, and he is actually target A right now. And we see that Yui is already making moves on the people close to Kosuke, where she's saying let's send Jace on a vacation, where she's trying to isolate him. But Jace being removed from the board is going on a vacation or potentially getting fired. Hansuke is now involved in things, like you said, with potential legal consequences or lifelong career consequences, amongst anything else Yui could do to him, because there's a lot that she can do.
And because Eugene is working in the dark, she's relatively safe. She wasn't the person who handed that food over. In fact, she didn't care about that man at all. And that's the saddest part about this, is that it was Hansuke caring about, this poor person who is homeless, living outside. It's so cold. He wants to give him something. Kosuke doesn't even want these leftovers. Why let them go to waste? Let's give them this to this person who could use them. Eugene is just this man doesn't care. He did this himself. He probably cares more about drugs. Hansuke is how can you even have that stance? So he's the one who goes and asks them to give this food to that man.
We're seeing this pattern start to kind of establish itself of Hansuke's benevolence getting him into trouble and causing losses for him and others, and Eugene's self-servingness keeping her safe.
Which is, unfortunately, I'm not going to say completely a mirror to reality, but it is the self-serving people who manage to, stay afloat, because that's the whole purpose of being self-serving, is you're protecting yourself first and foremost. And Hansuke, bless his heart, just wants to do good things and help people, and his circumstances are screwing him the entire time. Obviously when whatever comes to happen to Hansuke happens, Eugene is gonna feel like shit.
He does care enough about Hansuke that it's not just gonna roll off of her back. Like the same way that we start to see that care coming out when he's worried that he is poisoned.
Right. It's just it's gonna be such a too little too late moment, and it's gonna be so upsetting and unfortunate. Like, I used to worry that Hansuke was just like, he's gonna lose his job, and then what's he gonna do with all of his waifus? You know, how is he gonna afford to live? How is he gonna house all of his waifus without a job? And now it's like, oh my god, what's gonna happen to all of his waifus if he ends up in jail for
Right.
killing
And
a
it's-
person because he can't explain the drugged food? It's
Right. How do you explain to anyone? And I think it's the thing is, again, like we said, like this arc was Hansuke stepping onto the chessboard, and I don't think we really expected him to be a player. Like, we know that he's in the family, but similar to like someone like Maya or even Dita, like they're just kind of around and they're playing the social supporting role, not a chessboard role. So it was like we expect him to lose, but we expect him to lose before he ever gets on the board, like as a preventative to prevent him from getting on the board or to be used as a pawn without really being on the board.
right.
What we're seeing, like, oh no, he has stepped into the game and it's not going to end well for him.
Right. And it just makes me sad because like Hansuke's that character that you just want to protect no matter what. He's been nothing but good and kind. He's always been okay, from what we've seen, he's been really sweet to Noel. He's always been kind. He's just so supportive of Kosuke. He's the one person who is always in Kosuke's corner. And then
No pun intended.
oh god.
Kosuke's corner coming back to an I Love You near you.
Bless. But yeah, like, and it's one of those things too where like I cannot hold things against Eugene because we know who she is. We know what she is. I'm not going to say that she's a terrible person. We
No.
all agree that she's very self-serving. We all agree that she has made choices that we can sometimes find questionable. But also, we all know that things are not going to move without the choices she's making, and that is an unfortunate choice,
Right.
or
And
an unfortunate truth.
She does still have that moral compass. Like, that moral compass is tied into her self-servingness, but part of her being a foil to Yui is like she doesn't have the same methods exactly. She doesn't have the same disposition on life. We see her even say, you know, to Shanae that a long time ago she knew someone who had went through a similar situation with sexual assault, and that's something that she cares about. Whereas like Yui is a person who a long time ago likely went through that same situation, and this is how it turned her out. Where Eugene still has, she does have a morality to her. It's just kind of secondary to her self-servingness.
Right. One thing I have to appreciate a lot about I Love You is that all of the female characters are so well-rounded. We don't have characters who are purely villainous and purely, heroine. We don't have any characters who are completely bad or completely good. Everybody is a little bit of both. I mean, I guess you can argue that yes, Yui is like gone full villainous honest, but we see how she got to that point, right?
And she does still have a point on some things. Like, she is still fighting a fight against her patriarchal family. She's expanded it way farther than it ever needed to go, and there's a bunch of collateral that makes her a villain because it doesn't need to be happening. But that's still her core motivation.
And I think the thing that makes bad writing as far as female characters go is when you can only write these really flat characters and you can only have like, here's your bad female character, here's your good female character, or worse when you only have like a good female character and then you have lots of bad female characters. Whereas Kimchi is really good at writing characters who are quote quote good as in, you know, like they're playing for the good side, but they have bad traits, and characters who come to us as being quote, quote, bad characters. However, we understand how they end up there or what their circumstances are, and see that there's more to them than just being quote, quote, bad and villain. And I think that is something that's really important,
And
because
also,
we
and they all have
understand.
varied. They're all varied. They all have varied
Yes,
motivations too.
right. It's not, yeah, that's also true too. It's just it's so important to write female characters who feel like people and aren't all just there to support your main female character. It's so important to write characters who are allowed to be bad, quote quote, you know, characters who are not allowed, because we live in a society now where, oh no, this character has bad traits, that means I can't like them, even though it is so inherently human to have things that make us human. You can be a little selfish, you can be a little jealous. Maya, you're my girl forever. Like, I don't, they'll never make me hate you. I understand your jealousy completely. Yujing being this character who is technically the one who is shepherding our takedown of Yui, being somebody who is self-serving, and she is far from flawless. I love it. I wish this was something that people would learn to harness more. When I say people, I don't mean just like webtoon writers or fanfic writers. I mean published writers. I'm
Yeah, just
looking
in
at
general.
you. I want casts of female characters who are just a variety. I want them to feel like characters. I don't want them to all be set up to be an antagonist to my like perfect little shy main character who for some reason everybody is in love with and then a whole bunch of people hate, you know? Like anyway, that's a tangent.
And I think Yujing is also just like a really good capture of it, with her kind of coming in as this very like girl character, and this like
Yes.
girl, and also like that a lot of our other female characters seem to look up to in some way, where having her be representative of this writing style and this writing trend, it feels very meta with her role as like the girl's girl in the story.
It does, but it's so very necessary. Like, I still think so much about just like the way Eugene exists in Shanae's head as basically that hot journalist who kissed me on the cheek that one time.
The reporter lady.
Oh yes, the news, right. And just like, that's such a foundational moment for Shanae, is like, very hot lady cornered me, gave me a little smooch on the cheek, and it lives rent free in Shanae's mind because I mean, let's be real, it would live rent free in my mind too, like 24/7 nonstop.
It's also just like you're just sitting there in this little restaurant. It's just like it's unexpected.
Right, and all because it would get Kosuke to look away, but it's still just like, what does this mean?
Like, what just happened to me?
It's just such a cute awakening kind of thing for Shanae, because it's not, and I don't mean awakening in like a sexual way, but I remember when Eugene is talking to her when they're supposed to do that little interview, and she's like, has nobody told you that you're cute before, or like pretty or whatever? Because Shanae's so flustered about this hot newspaper reporter calling her pretty, and it's like, girl, you need some more support in your life. Let Eugene lift you up. So yes, I do love Eugene for things like that. Like, I may talk a lot about her being self-serving and how she throws people under the bus, but I think I feel like anybody who's listened to me yap long enough knows that if I heavily critique a character, it's because I really love them and I find them to be very well structured and written, and I just get to enjoy them all the way. And Eugene is one of those. I like how she's presented to us as a hero, and she is, in fact, you know, she's self-serving. She's doing something that is going to help people, but like
She's
it
not this
doesn't make her a hero, but I still appreciate her, and I love that she's a girl's girl, and I love that she's still
yes,
looking out for people.
but she's not like this like golden hero swoops in, saves the day, gives us the golden ticket, righteous weapon to get out, is like moral god. Like she's just a girl.
Right. And I think something that we're seeing in I Love You is that self-righteousness isn't actually going to do you a lot of favors. We're seeing a lot of characters who are losing their self-righteousness or possibly will. Um, we're not going to get into it at this moment because we could talk about it forever, but I think we're going to see some of that with Shanae too. Is one of her main character traits is that she is so incredibly self-righteous, and I think she has to learn to let go of some of that. I'm
Yes.
not saying that she's going to let go of all of it, but I'm saying it's one of those things that unfortunately we learn that in order to survive, we cannot hold on entirely to self-righteousness because unfortunately the world does not work that way, and we have to learn to yield to things that sometimes we don't enjoy. And it doesn't mean that you always have to do things that you don't agree with, but I think this is something Shanae is going to have to learn because her self-righteousness is one of the things that has gotten her into a lot of the trouble that she's gotten into. But we'll save that for another episode. Or no, let me hear your thoughts.
I was going to say, and we can talk more about it in another episode, but it comes back to
Yes.
this kind of nice character arc writing in I Love You where everyone's goal at the end is to be balanced. And we see that
Yes.
Kimchi introduces basically the whole spectrum of human traits, and she's showing off the benefits of them as well as the flaws, even with things that Rand says about people can take advantage of your benevolent traits, where he
Mhm.
is in the situation that he's in because of his ambition, but he is also there because he was too trusting and believed the best in people who took advantage of him. And we see that with self-righteousness. We see that with we see that as well with self-sacrificing.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
we see that with self-confidence. We see it with self-worthlessness. And it's that like all of our characters have traits that can be beneficial or detrimental. And we're seeing the ways that the traits that help them out are ones that they are using in positive ways, that they have in a balance. And traits that don't help them out are ones that are unbalanced and being used in an unhelpful way. And that there is a middle ground that you can get to with whatever assortment of traits you have. That's even like we've said with Yui, like she is so smart. She's incredibly intelligent. She's incredibly skilled. She is incredibly self assured. And all of these are considered good traits. And she's using them for abysmal evils, right?
Right.
And
And
she could have been a completely different person morally with the same personality she has.
right, which is part of what that foil with Eugene is seeing who she could be if she, had chosen a different path. If she had decided, hey, I've had enough revenge. Maybe I should actually try to live a life for myself now. Maybe I should, figure out what else I want. She could have chosen to embark on her own career and start her own thing, or like her own, company. And she, you know, decided to stick with the status quo.
Okay, so talking kind of about the writing of female characters in I Love You. This is a little bit of a stretch transition, but in the Christmas party, we start to learn a lot about the Kim family and the dynamics between Gun and Yui, and Gun and potentially Kosuke, Gun and his daughter, Gun and his sons, and the Kim children as a whole.
And yet, one of those is not there.
Yeah, so we get some interesting just information about the Kim daughter, where it seems like all of the prominent sons are included because Yui only mentions the absence of the daughter. And they say that she's not much for social gatherings unless it's related to work. And we get the tidbit that she somehow works directly with Alyssa, who's regarded as being easy to work with. And that she doesn't seem to be involved with anything in the family outside of work.
Really interesting the way that they mention work with Alyssa, because it still leaves us wondering what exactly she's doing, you know?
Right.
Because obviously a very long-standing theory right now is that the girl at the Christmas party, or let's say the Hirahara company party, that is the
The
one
group.
where Alyssa and her group performed and Noel was in attendance. The long-standing theory is that that blonde who spoke to Alyssa and then later overheard / saw Alyssa and Noel having that altercation is a Kim daughter. And I still stand by this theory
I
because
also do.
the specific shade of blonde is very specific. And so, like, talking about how she works with Alyssa, and Alyssa's really easy to work with, and she makes it really easy. Just, she has a lot of questions. It's got a lot of questions because they specifically say she must have her work cut out for her now, especially with Alyssa's recent comeback. I hope she gets to rest. She doesn't mind. She's somewhat of a workaholic. She loves being busy. Besides, it's not like Alyssa makes it difficult for her. She's incredibly easy to work with. So on the one hand, it does imply that, like you said, she's working directly with her. But on the other hand, if she is who we think she is, and therefore they had that run-in at the Hirahara company party, Alyssa makes it seem like they're not working together.
Right. Like, it makes me my primary wonder is, like, is she somehow involved in, like, the media marketing? That's what I'm thinking, like, media marketing, where Alyssa wouldn't know her, but her job is
to know Alyssa.
Is to know Alyssa, yes. And that
And
goes
know
hand
things
in hand with her.
about Alyssa.
Right. And that goes hand in hand with her kind of having that recorder on her and targeting Alyssa with it.
Especially because Alyssa makes it easy. She trusts a little too much. She's very willing to open up. She she needs the publicity. She wants the publicity.
And
I
she's
don't think
currently a favorite.
exactly.
And he said, like, it's been like that. He mentioned Alyssa's comeback, which is interesting because Alyssa just debuted.
Technically, they are having a comeback because they are dropping their next single. So presumably what's happening, based off of what I know, I don't think they're dropping. Okay, very basic K-pop background here. I've promised P that we will go more in depth on this sometime, and we should do that soon.
We should.
Basic things going on, right? K-pop has what you call a mini album, which would be an EP by American or Western music standards. And this is going to be an album that is more than a single, so more than like 2 or 3 songs, but is less than what constitutes for an album, which I think is like 5 to 6 songs.
Albums are usually 7 songs or at least 30 minutes, and anything less than that is
so 30 minutes. Okay, well, there we go. So a lot of the times when a group debuts, they're going to release an EP or a mini album, because usually when a group debuts, they release a mini album or an EP, because obviously you're not going to invest completely in a debut group without knowing if they're going to be worth all that money, right? So chances are what's happened is they released their mini album, and it's been roughly 2 months timeline wise, right? We started in September.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, September, October, November, December. Okay, it's been 3 months. So my guess, technically, if they were very ambitious, the company, they could have gone and released another mini album. However, they're not going to do that without any promotion. You're never going to do that. You don't surprise drop an album. So chances are what they are promoting now is a B-side off of their album, unless they're dropping a digital single, which I guess it could be. Regardless, even if it's still off of that album, it's still going to count as a comeback because they're now promoting a new song.
New thing. Okay.
My guess is going to be digital single because, frankly, especially by K-pop standards, even though Kimchi is probably pulling from K-pop of the era that I also kind of, I can't say grew up with because I was in my 20s, but the K-pop that I'm most familiar with, right? Even by those standards, you're not going to do a B-side off of an album that is now like 2.5, 3 months old, you know? You should, because they usually have really great B-sides. But also, the crowd kind of holds this as a new song, something they haven't heard before. So my guess is digital single, which is easier to drop. But regardless, it is a comeback. The group is promoting something new, which means they're going to have new promotions and blah, blah, blah. And promotions usually involve well, it depends. Digital singles can vary, but like going on to music shows and sometimes, like getting variety show content. I guess they do that less nowadays, but again, it kind of depends on what kind of generation of K-pop Kimchi is basing things off of. Like maybe they're going to have digital content. At any rate, yeah. So
yeah,
comeback.
So that makes a lot of sense with him being like with Alyssa's comeback. Things, she's had a lot to do, but it's been easy.
Interesting that they speak specifically about Alyssa and not the group, even though like it's the group. I mean, I guess because like Kim daughter is specifically working, quote quote, with Alyssa. I guess it makes sense for conversation, but also
it starts putting, it further exemplifies that whole Alyssa solo career thing, especially after being assaulted by the Kims and his investors. To have his daughter working directly with specifically Alyssa.
Exactly. Because here's the thing. What kind of reporter is she? Because she's overseeing some very incriminating things about Alyssa, you know? And if she wanted, she could spin this to make Alyssa look bad. And that's probably the whole point. Because how else do you continue to coerce somebody if you don't have enough dirt on them? Obviously, once you have assaulted them, once you have engaged in this, you kind of have the, let's call it dirt, even though I don't view it this way, but I think you guys trust me enough to understand that this is not what I am viewing it as, but how Gunn and his ilk would look at it. Once you have engaged with her, you have the dirt that you could go to the media and say that Alyssa sleeps around with people to get ahead or in order to gain these benefits. But still, I think having his daughter specifically working with her to continue to gather, even more dirt, as well as whatever else she's doing, is, really interesting because, right, like it's his own daughter and the very person that he's investing in. This is the girl or like the Hirahara family has invested in Alyssa's group and has essentially endorsed Alyssa herself. Like the layers to this are uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely. Especially just knowing what we expect to be the trajectory and what's already happened. It also, for me, it raises kind of more questions about how exactly does the Kim daughter fit into this family where she's working with them. She's working at the company. We're guessing that she's like media marketing type with Alyssa, but she also, like you said, she has that reporter vibe. She's digging up dirt. And if she were with the family and involved in that way, it would be easy to say like, "Oh, she's digging it up so that she can blackmail Alyssa." But what does she want? What is her relationship to the family, especially coming
And
from such a misogynistic family
exactly,
as the
because she's
only
not
girl?
at this family gathering.
Right.
She's not here with Gunn and the boys.
And it seems
And
common. He's kind
hmm,
of like, well, and Gunn's response is kind of like, well, she's always not here. She's only
right.
ever here if it's work.
And it's like, is she a workaholic or does she just not like you and
Right.
her
She does not want to
misogynistic
be there.
family? What if this is like my favorite theory that's come out of this, and I wish I could remember who to credit this to? What if she is the mystery person working with Eugene?
Right. Like, and like
Because
whether
think about it, right?
I think it would
Like,
make sense. And whether she is or
exactly.
isn't, it feels it feels like she has kind of a dual allegiance where she's aligned to the Kims
Hmm.
and her family because you know, unlike some other people might, she does want to keep those like she's not like a Shishido where she's willing to renounce it all for her morals and for what she holds dear to herself.
Hmm.
But she's also not doesn't seem to be a Yui where she's willing to give up everything moral to get to the top and stay connected.
Hmm.
Where she falls in between, where they're like, oh, when it's work related, she's here. She's willing to work with the family. She's willing to work with the company. She likely knows about everything that's going on and is willing to kind of keep it covered up. But we also get the sense that she has some similarities with like a Yujing, and she
Hmm.
has
Hmm.
some desire to when it's not about business, she doesn't want to be involved. She probably doesn't like what's going on. She might have some
Exactly.
motivation to, in some ways, kind of turn on the family.
Right? Like, let's suppose she is working with Eugene. She comes from a family who, like you said, maybe she doesn't support them. Maybe she kind of looks the other way because in a sense it's benefiting her right now. But what if it benefits her more to go ahead and reveal them? What if this is an opportunity for her to kind of show up the misogynists in her family and get away from that unscathed? Because, she doesn't have to put her neck on the line the way Eugene is doing it.
Right. She's not in the mission enough to lose out herself, but if the opportunity presents itself to cut like to kind of cut that off without losing on her own, it from the little nuggets that we've gotten, my guess is that she'll take it.
And like you said, we don't know that she's necessarily digging up dirt on Alyssa. What if she is collecting evidence that could assist Alyssa? We've talked a lot about how Alyssa probably doesn't have a very happy ending, but I think, it could be something that helps to illuminate the things that the Kims have been doing and what they have coerced girls and probably countless other girls aside from Alyssa into. Um, she knows the nature of her father. She probably knows of other scenarios and situations that have taken course. Maybe, because the very specific things that she is picked up on was like, Alyssa and her connections to the Hiraharas at that Hirahara company party, and also Alyssa having an altercation with Noel, who Eugene is, who, you know, he's a focal point in Eugene's work right now. It just creates a very interesting possibility. I'm not going to say that there's not a chance that Kim daughter wouldn't throw Alyssa under the bus for the sake of, you know, what is required of her career. But I think it would be very interesting because, again, we talk so much about how the thing I Love You does the most is subvert our expectations. We meet a very shady blonde at this party who looks like she is collecting dirt on Alyssa and that this is going to come back and bite her in the ass. Well, what if that's not what's playing out then? What if, you know, it is because she is aligned with Eugene and she is gathering a different kind of evidence?
And even if it does come back to bite Alyssa, like whether that's because it's necessary in something else or because it helps
because
Kim
even
daughter's career.
Right.
Like,
even if they're like trying to expose Gunn, it's still going to bite Alyssa in the ass. Like, I want to be very clear about that.
It could be something similar to like Eugene's expose hurting Kosuke, where it's for some other purpose and she's willing to take the collateral damage. And so like maybe it does hurt Alyssa, but there's some
but not
other
in the way that
goal.
we're expecting it to.
Right. And the other possibility, which I think this is less likely, but it could kind of go with the idea that she's likely someone who has strong opinions but turns her head the other way and just kind of lets things happen. Like, she could be just a person who gathers a lot and decides what to use later as well.
Yep. What is that, like mercenary for hire or something? It's like,
basically.
Yeah.
And so like we're gonna have to see how exactly this footage of Alyssa gets used. Does she have a purpose for it in mind? Is it a purpose that's self-serving to her and harmful to Alyssa? Is it a purpose that is harmful to Alyssa as well as overall helpful and potentially helpful to like helpful in like some sort of like, you know, the overarching Hirahara's Kim's plot? Is it something that will somehow turn around and help Alyssa? Is it something that is kind of neutral and is going to go to the highest bidder or whoever gives her a reason to use it? We don't know yet.
Right.
But it's interesting to lay out the possibilities and start to try to form this idea of who is the daughter raised in the worst family towards women in the entire comic.
I'm so excited to eventually meet her. Just because, right, like you said, the circumstances are so fascinating, and I would not be very surprised if it does turn out to be something where she does turn a blind eye to things and she kind of takes whatever's like the highest bid or whatever benefits her the most, because I feel like that would be befitting of a Kim in a way that is like, I'm not completely aligned with them, but you know,
like I'm
still a Kim.
hanging out with my scummy father and scummy brothers, but
I still learned to be a Kim. Right.
Yeah.
And it would kind of be a character who we don't really have that kind of character set up in our female characters yet. So it would also be really interesting to see to play out and how that dynamic works. I do really hope she's the person that Eugene is working with, because I think it would be so fucking interesting to see Eugene working with an actual Kim, because who better to help her than somebody who's actually inside.
Yes. And that's the big thing. I know that we've all said that like that's probably a big role of the Kim daughter, is that like she's not aligned. She's clearly not aligned with the rest of the Kim family the way that everyone else is. She's, even if she was aligned with them, inherently the odd one out by virtue of being a girl. And she's still very clearly in that circle.
Which is just fascinating because, oh my god, I'm such a broken record. I am so sorry, guys. I need to step up my vernacular. the Yui versus Kim daughter setup that we have, right? Where Yui chooses to continue to participate in the system because it benefits her, where Kim daughter has clearly chosen not to participate in this and to at least take advantage of her status, because let's be real, being a Kim has probably assisted her in her career, but it's her own career and it's not her participating in the system that her father has created.
Mhm.
Not at least in the same way that Yui is.
Yes, Yui is actively perpetuating that harm, and like you said, we get the impression that Kim daughter is more of she'll turn a blind eye to what she needs to.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that she is at the very least trying to make her own career, so that even if the Kim family does fall in no way related to her, cough cough, well,
She's not
where does that
she's
put
not
those Kim
dependent on
brothers, huh?
Hmm?
Where does that leave those Kim brothers? Because
Right.
boy, are they fucking useless. It is. Listen, okay, we always thought that Songchul was just like the worst, and then we
To find out
met
that
Songhyun.
Right, to find out that Sungchul is actually, like, the baby of the family, and they're like, "Oh, but you give him everything," and he's like and Gun's like, "He's my last hope," like, he's actually trying to do something with his life.
Isn't
And then
that like so? Like, he's my last
to
hope, and it's like,
find out that Sungchul is somehow the
oh,
golden child.
how bad are these losers? I before we dig into these guys, because we really gotta, I want to point out interesting naming conventions again. We have
Mhm.
Young Chol, who has, the Chol syllable. Gun, who we only know as Gun, and Kin, she has only called Gun. But like, I always wonder if he could have been like a Gun Chol, because I have looked it up and this is an actual name. But we've only been told that he's Gun. Um, all of the brothers, okay, we can assume that the brothers all have Song syllable names, because we have Song Chol, we have Song Hyun. Presumably, the other brother is going to be a Song something. I
Yeah.
wonder if the daughter is also a Song. But isn't it interesting that Song Chol, the baby, the last son, the golden boy, my last hope, is a Song Chol taking Young Chol's syllable with him.
Mhm.
I find that very, it's a choice. Like,
Very much
are there any
to that.
other children? Is Songchol really the last one? We know what kind of fucking cad Gun is. Is it
Mhm.
just that, I don't know,
After
is Songchol
Sungchul,
really the
he's like,
one?
"This is the last one I'm having. If this one doesn't work out, we're done anyway."
He's just like made sure that every woman he's ever slept with ever is like highly birth controlled, and if he's got ways to take care of that, because
He's
you
like,
know
"We're
what,
not doing this again. All of these boys are useless."
I mean, is he wrong? So we meet Songhyun, who has heard about all of the strife that poor Hansuke has gone through for his career, that he's probably about to lose despite everything. And he's basically like, fuck that. You're working for things. Why don't you just like use your name and your riches and just like not do that? And he presents to us his grand idea to get rich and basically have a party. He calls it a celebration every day, which is just Burning Sun 2.0. And I think anybody who listens to this by now knows what Burning Sun is. But if for some reason you don't, or you're a new listener, Burning Sun was a nightclub started by a former, well, was he former at the time? No, but he is now a member of a very well-known and prominent K-pop group, Big Bang. Seungri was his name, and boy was he a sleazeball. I say was, like he's dead and gone. He's still out there, unfortunately. The Burning Sun was basically a cover for sex trafficking. We're just gonna
Mhm.
safely call it sex trafficking. If you paid the right price, a lot of you could do things with a lot of poor unfortunate victims. Um, and that's very much what it sounds like Songhyun wants. He's not saying it directly, but he's setting it up very much that way. Like it's going to be exclusive, so only certain people can get in. And obviously these are going to be like big names, big money people. But
Especially just
everyone's going to want to get in.
and
What's
especially
that?
just knowing how the Kim's parties are already weird,
Exactly.
what
And he
happens at those
mentioned
parties.
specifically the parties that their families throw, because clearly what he wants is whatever happens there, he wants this happening like all the time. And he
Mhm.
wants people who are going to pay a pretty penny for that every day, all the time. He wants to just enjoy all of that. And interestingly, Gun is like, no, I'm not gonna give you the money for that. We're not doing that. And he
Mhm.
says it's because Songhyun hasn't like actually set up a business plan, and he wants him to get investors first. And obviously, no one's gonna like invest heavy in this, and like he can't like tell them what he's really doing. I mean, I guess he could. There's probably freaks out there who would be like, "Oh, hell yeah, let's fucking do this." But like I don't think you can put that in the papers. But like who's going to invest heavy in like yet another nightclub? Um if Kimchi's basing this at all off of, like Korea, nightclubs open and close like crazy there. Like it's just gone there one day, gone the next. Um and Songhyun is banking on this being like so exclusive. Everyone's going to want to get in there. Probably implying that he thinks all of the girls will be willing to do anything to get in there, if you catch my drift. But interestingly, Gun's like, nah, I'm not giving you the money. I'm cutting all of you off. You don't get access to your trust's funds.
And
Which
I
is
think it's
like real interesting because aren't we rich? Why
right.
do
I
you
think it's
suddenly care
interesting.
so much about us having access to our monies or not, Papa?
Right. And I think it's interesting to consider the possible reasons why. We're like, one reason for this specifically declining this nightclub endeavor could be Gunn is running a pretty tight ship on the sex
Exactly.
trafficking, and he does not trust his son to not ruin the whole operation with this nightclub.
You can't get sloppy and like air out our business. Like,
Right. Like, we have a system here.
you get caught, everything's going to lead back to us. And then what?
Right. We're all dead in the water here.
And where do you think your trust fund money is coming from, huh?
Right. And he's like, and he's saying it himself, he can't keep floating them forever. And if they ruin it, he definitely can't keep floating them forever.
The other theory was posed by somebody in our server, and once again, I should have done my research and gone back and found who said this so that we can credit them properly. Hopefully, by the time we edit this, we have done that. Somebody posited a really fantastic theory that the Kims are hemorrhaging their money. I think we've talked before about this, that the Hiroharas are clearly like very old money. They are established. That money it's there. We know that Papa Kim or Papa God Wards, that Papa Hirahara started the Hirahara company. Um, and maybe they probably already had assets before that because they are established. The Kims, however, feel very new money. We've always had this sense from Gun in the way that he spends money, in the way that he acts,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of style of parties he throws.
And
He
there are Kims working for the Hiroharas, but there's not Hiroharas working for the Kims that we know of.
Yes, this is a good point too. And so obviously new money is a lot easier to run out of because it's just not as affluent. There's a status here in terms of the riches, and the Hiroharas are 1%. Gun is not there. unfortunately for him. Or we can assume. And so the theory is that the Kims are hemorrhaging money, and he is trying to hide it. He's cutting his sons off because he's trying to stop the money, but he still has to keep up appearances. Hence the extravagant party. Hence showing up to this Christmas party with a whole bunch of gifts, not just for the Hiraharas but also for the staff, because image is so important to him.
And using the money that they have in the ways that he can control, right? He can weigh out the cost. He can weigh out the costs and benefits of throwing the party, of buying the Christmas gifts, of showing up however he wants to. He's not in control of his son's idiocracies.
Right. And he doesn't know how much the sons can drain him further. So it's a very interesting theory, and I'm very into it because why else is he cutting them off? I don't think Gun. Well, okay, let me dial back a little bit. I feel like Young Chol had a work ethic. I think he was a lecherous creep as well. But we kind of get this sense that Young Chol was the person who really helped to restabilize the Hirahara company, because they even state that the company has just gotten restabilized when it was supposed to be passing on from Young Chol to Koichi. And that's why he has to extend his retirement, because we've got to find somebody else. All of our plans are out the water. Where we can't be put back into another unstable, vulnerable position. So I think we kind of get a sense that Young Chol actually worked hard.
Yeah.
And he just also did lecherous, disgusting, horrible things as well.
Like many people, unfortunately.
Yes.
And then
Gun probably has never had the same work ethic. And
I get the impression that Gun is that turning point, right? Where like he didn't have to work his way the same way that Young Chol did. He didn't have the same responsibilities to take care of. But there's still, the company has just restabilized. There's still connection. There's still kind of new money. He has to be prepared to maintain it. He's prepared for a lifestyle where the money's not going to just flow in. He does have to work, but he can also kind of,
He found a way to make some money, just not how his father was doing it.
Yeah, he can dip his way. He can dip into the other side where he can do a little bit less. He can have different revenue streams. He doesn't have to work as hard. He can rely on what his father built for him to some extent. He just knows that he has to be able to continue it.
Right. And he's realizing he doesn't exactly have successors, does he?
By the time his sons came around, he's stable enough in what he and his father built that he's living that bachelor lifestyle. And that's what his sons learn, and they never learned the work ethic from sleazy grandpa. They didn't learn the work ethic from Gun because he had kind of laid off of it by the time
he wasn't even like much of a father to them. We get the impression.
No, he wasn't really.
Song Chol makes it sound like, Song Chol like makes that comment that he's not. God, I can't remember word for word what it is, but he essentially says that there's not going to be any money for him. And we don't know if he means because there's just so many children, or because he knows that the money is hemorrhaging, and by the time there's inheritance for them, there's not going to be anything to inherit.
Right, that it's not stable. And so there seems to be something that has thrown off the stability in the Kims. Maybe it was Gun getting lax about working. Maybe it was something else. So they're regardless of whether the money is like super hemorrhaging or they're just not bringing in as much as they're putting out, and they don't have a plan to stop that. There's something, potentially they're losing money. and Gun at the same time that he is potentially having to reconcile with, I have to fix this future financial crisis, is realizing that all of his sons are a sack pile of useless.
Way too late, he's realizing, hey, I didn't prepare my sons for my future. Shit, what do I do now?
Yeah, it's like they're not even just a sack pile of useless. They're worse. They're a sack pile of useless leeches.
He's literally like, Songchul, you're my only hope. Go work at the Hirahara company and learn a thing or two.
No,
Which
literally.
is not
He's
to
like, please
make it
don't fix this.
not to make a very terrible Songchul joke, but like, what a place to lay all of your eggs in a basket.
No.
So sorry. So we learn a fair bit about Songhyun, right? Like we get the feeling he is about the same lifestyle as his father. We don't learn anything about the other brother. He's just there. But we know enough, I guess, to guess that he's also worthless and useless because
And Gun is lumping
Songchul.
them together.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gun's lumping them together. The other brother doesn't have anything to say, and Sunghyun is like, Sungchul's the baby.
You know, we're gonna go ahead and say it. It's been pointed out before. Songchul is his behavior just stands out a lot in this episode. He's very quiet. He keeps his mouth shut. He's not making any kind of snarky, sarcastic remarks. He kind of knows his place, but also he is watching. His eyes, he's seeing, you know? I noticed, like, even when Kosuke gets up to leave, Songchul turns around in his chair to watch him walk away. And it felt like a very curious thing to zero in on us for. Songchul is paying a lot of attention to the things Kosuke's saying, to the altercations between Kosuke and his brothers, to the way that his father's talking. Like, he clearly doesn't want to be there, but he's also just paying attention.
He's taking it in. And I think this is a potential interesting kind of turning mechanism for it's kind of long been theorized that Sungchul will be an unlikely ally with Noel.
Yes.
And like kind of the like, we don't like each other, but we have to work together vibe.
Yes,
And
whether by choice or because it benefits him.
Right. And so watching as Sungchul seems to realize that there's no money left for him, he's going to have to figure something else out. And taking in everything that's happening at the dinner, watching and listening to his father, watching, listening to his brothers, paying so much attention to Kosuke.
Maybe he's even aware that Yui is unraveling a little bit.
Right, it sets up Songchul to, if he develops the motivation, which it seems like he might be, start taking on that sort of active role and following the brothers more so than the rest of the Kims.
Right. And the thing is with Songchul, like, even if he doesn't have the entire motivation, I think he knows enough that this is a sinking ship, and if he has to deflect to save his ass, I think he will do it. We've seen enough of Songchul to know that he's, when I say he's interested in the brothers, like, I don't, it sounds a certain way when I say it, but he's interested in them,
Yes.
They're golden boys in a way that he's not. Even Noel gets a kind of attention that he doesn't have. His own father doesn't pay attention to him. I will always think about the end of the black and white formal where, Miss Gunn suddenly remembers his boy and he's like, oh, my boy, where's he at? And it's like, oh, now you're thinking about him?
Like, oh, right, I have a son. And we know that if nothing else right now, Sungchul wants attention. He desires it.
So
And he's
badly.
so jealous of it. And when he has that conflict with Shanae in that confrontation in the break room, he's like,
I'll have you
"What
know,
are
I have
you offering
so
to
many friends.
I have so many friends. Everyone wants to hang out with me. What do you have that the brothers are interested in you?"
Why are they interested in you and not me, huh?
No,
Huh?
literally. He's just yelling and barking for attention because daddy's never remembered him. But then at the same time, we learn that apparently he's the baby and he's the favorite, which also says a lot for how ignored everyone else must be.
Right. First off, this is why we classified Songchul as a Chihuahua. I just want to give you guys that reminder. And it does make you feel really sad about him because Songchul comes across as what happens to a lot of what people will call quote quote problem children, where it's like I'm not saying that he wouldn't have turned out the way he did if he had present family in his life, but I am saying a lot of what he's doing is acting out for attention and because he is love starved.
Yeah, and we get that impression again. That's part of why he would be able to be an unlikely ally with Noel is that there, and why he's the favorite and the last hope for the family is that there is something worthwhile within him that has never been nurtured. And we're seeing all of this, like, just all of this Songchul Chihuahua come out in response to that starvation for attention. Where, like you
And
said,
it's
like, could he still turn out terrible with attention? Yes. But is the way
because
that he
Gun is
turned out
terrible.
right? But is the way that he turned out definitely related to his lack of attention? Yes.
Yes. It's very interesting that you mentioned Noel being a saving grace essentially for him because the Kims don't have to be loyal to Kosuke. They have to be loyal to the Hirahara family and
Mm-hmm.
therefore whoever is the heir, which is why, yes, Songchul could benefit from an alliance with Noel, which would, in effect, take him on that different path. Because now he doesn't necessarily have to follow the dark Hirahara path. He could follow the Noel path, which could pull him away from all of that.
Right. And
Because
especially again, knowing that, as he has said, there's nothing waiting for him in the inheritance.
he has no reason to actually remain loyal to what his own family wants.
Mm-hmm.
He just has to find his own rescue boat.
Yes.
And like I said, like I'm not saying that I think he's going to change a full leaf, but I do think that he is going to see the value in deflecting at some point because he's going to realize that he has no other options on this sinking ship.
Yeah.
So
There's going to be something in it for him to defect. It's not going to be like Kosuke where he has a moral reckoning. It's going to be there's some benefit.
I do think it will benefit him in the long run if he plays his cards right, but that's for Songchul to play out.
Yeah.
But I do think we're going to see it going that way. But it's whereas Songchul himself doesn't have to be loyal. I'm so curious about the Hirahara Kim loyalties because we were talking earlier about how we very strongly feel Youngchul is the papa. I'm sorry, Kosuke. I feel like your brother is Gun. I don't think Gun's the daddy.
I think
Which,
it's like I think it's almost confirmed that
yeah,
Youngchul is the dad.
it's the coloring of the memory. It has to be. It's not just that she showed us that Yui used her body in desperation. It's that this is where it began. And this is where she had to start pulling things together.
It all goes back
And
to
this is what makes me wonder, who knows? Because Gun and Yui have a very unlikely alliance. Why is Yui working with Gun? Unless she has to. Like, what kind of benefit do the Hiraharas receive from the Kims?
Right. That keeps them in this alliance.
So it makes me wonder, does Young Chol know he's Papa? Does Gun know that Young Chol is Papa? Has she led Gun to believe? Because my thinking is, let's go with the first, okay? Let's say Young Chol knows and he's keeping the secret because, what's he gonna do? Tell the truth. And Gun knows because I don't know why he knows. We're just saying he knows, okay? They can keep this alliance because it's benefiting them. Gun still has direct ties to the Hiraharas and it benefits him, and he's probably getting paid because they still have the company connections, even though Young Chol is no longer directly involved in the company and he was planning on retiring anyway. The Hiraharas have absorbed K-Mall, and therefore we assume that the Kims are still getting some cuts of that. Yui Yui has to continue working with Gun because he knows her secret. So it's kind of like Gun is securing his place, whereas Yui, she's not so much benefiting from him as much as like she has to keep dealing with things so that he doesn't out the secret, is kind of what my thinking here is. Because I don't know what she's benefiting otherwise.
Do we know if Young Chul is dead?
We don't.
Because I also wonder, I feel like Young Chul either knows or can suspect, and his knowledge combined with his existing relationship with the Hirahara family is enough to secure the Kim family's influence, at least until he's dead.
Right.
So if he's still alive, that automatically kind of locks Yui into having to deal with the Kims.
That's true.
If he is not alive, whether
then
Gun
maybe she's
actually,
convinced Gun.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Gun actually knows or not, but how does she know that he doesn't?
Right. And it is like, because we have seen we have seen curious language coming from Gun with regards to Kosuke before, and we don't know if those are just red herrings that Kimchi has set up for us, or if this is a belief that Gun has about Kosuke. It would be very interesting if Gun has this belief based on something that Yui has let him believe for whatever reason. Although, like, I can't really imagine a scenario where, like, Yui could allow something to happen to let Gun believe that he fathered a child with her, but I don't, I'm just throwing like darts at a wall right now, contemplating things.
I feel
But I
like
do
it's
think
likely that Young Chul. I feel like it's likely that Young Chul knew or suspected that Yui's child was his,
because
and
the timing just has to be
right. It's right there, and then
for her, like, for that to happen, and then suddenly she's getting into this relationship with Rand, and oopsies, I'm pregnant. Like, he's got to strongly suspect it, and especially when that baby comes out
when
looking
that baby
just
pops
like
out,
her
when that supposedly
her and
half-white
the
baby pops
Kims.
out.
Right. No indication of Eurocentric aspects whatsoever.
And so I feel like Yui would be really unlikely to do or say anything that would let Gun Kim know or lead him to believe that Kosuke is somehow a Kim. But I think it's very possible that Grandpappy told Son about his brother, or gave some sort of
His brother!
indication.
Well, you're right. Oh, this is what it feels like when I remind everybody that Kosuke is Songchol's uncle.
Yes, that is exactly what you do to everyone
It's
else.
just because you threw it in so casually and I wasn't prepared.
But I feel like it's very possible that Youngchul either told Gun or gave him enough nuggets for Gun to be suspicious.
Yeah,
And
I think
Yui,
you're right.
Yeah, and Yui probably either knows that Gun knows or is suspicious that Gun knows, and that's enough to keep them locked into this partnership where if Gun says anything against Yui, he loses all of his business connections.
Mm-hmm.
And if Yui says anything against Gun, he might know this life-breaking secret about her.
Right. They're kind of like stalemated with each other because why else is she working with him?
Yeah, they're still made it into an alliance.
Exactly. I think that's exactly what it is, and I feel very strongly about this. And I like your interpretation of it that Youngchul told Gun about his brother. Oh god.
That's like if I were Youngchul and I've got a good relationship with the head of the Hiraharas right now. I've potentially got a son with the heir of the Hiraharas right now. And I'm new money looking to make sure that my family is secured through the next couple of generations. I'm letting my son in on that secret.
Because he's got to maintain those ties for you.
Mhm.
Like,
Or at
your
least
brother is the heir. You better not fuck this up.
right. It's also possible that Youngchul himself could have indicated that he told his son.
That's true, to set like that paranoia in her brain so that
Right.
yeah, I feel very strongly that it's something like
Yeah.
this.
Whatever
And
has to happen to secure the next generation.
I just want to go
Especially
back
because he
to
was the one who advocated for Yui.
man. Like I can't think of a way to talk about this that isn't gross, but like
Ugh.
for him, what a jackpot.
Oh.
Right? Like I'm sure
Ugh.
right.
Yeah, but no, you're right. He
The
makes
head of
his
the
way.
company's daughter, and
Uh-huh.
then she gets pregnant.
And so
And
the
she's
company that you've already been building ties with, that you
Mhm.
saved and stabilized, but you don't really. Once you're out, your family doesn't really have a strong role in anymore.
And
You
she's
have now
going into this
bonded your families
Mukoyoshi
forever.
relation. Yep, she's going into that Mukoyoshi marriage so that her child is going to be the heir. And guess whose child that is? Like, oh
Oh,
god. I love you makes us say the most disgusting
it
things,
does sometimes.
and it's terrible. But that's the way it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just on the one hand, it's bad enough. Like there are so many times that we've had like deeply held theories that like we fought so hard on and been like, I know, I'm so certain about this. And like it comes true and we're like, oh no. like we
Right,
know it,
like,
but
no.
having it
Like,
confirmed.
wait, now I have to deal with the fact that this is gross.
Right. Like it was bad enough when, we had it like actually confirmed on page that yes, Shanae was indeed at the formal 4-gun. Things were meant to happen. And then the fact that what if Young Chol is Kosuke's father, started out as like a joke that I threw at you and Bobby, and then the more we talked about it, the more I was like, wait, hold up. What if he actually is
no.
Song Chol's uncle? And like the fact that that was the thing that sealed it for me is like, what if his father is actually far worse than we actually thought? And then we get that episode, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
I mean, the Mukoyoshi theory is like the one thing coming true that doesn't hurt me.
Right. It's like, oh, this one's fine.
It's like, oh, thank God. Now I can like really drive things home better.
Especially with like we've all been saying Rand is a Mukiyoshi for years because we've just considered it canon, even though technically we didn't know. So now just being able to be like
because
Rand
it
is a
just
Mukiyoshi.
because it explained things so well. I was
There was like
like,
no other option.
why else would Yui care? She doesn't have a reason to care. You know, not to the gravity that she does.
And why else would Rand be a Hirahara?
Mhm. I mean, like, yeah, he could have chosen to take that name because he was an orphan and he wanted to belong to something, but like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope everybody listening to this, I hope you're not too traumatized by these new theories and what it will mean if we find out that, yeah, young Troll is in fact Papa, and that Gun knows or suspects that Kosuke is his little brother, and what it's going to mean whenever the truth about Kosuke not being Rand's child is revealed.
Yeah. Ooh. We're going to be seeing a lot more of the connection between the Hiraharas and the Kims.
Yeah. I feel like we've pretty much gone through everything, so I'm going to take this moment to go ahead and let you guys know what I fear is coming our way. Because I just feel like I've got to... You guys know I like to state things before they happen. That way, if they happen, I can be like, God damn it, I knew it. And that way, if they don't happen, I can be like, oh, thank fucking God. We don't usually say this, but I am going to say trigger warning for, well, this is going to give it away, but body harm and suicide. This is what we're getting into. So we can anticipate that the birth reveal has to be coming up soon. Or at the very least, by the time we make it to our time skip where, you know, Shanae's graduation and stuff, it's going to be revealed at some point, right? Kosuke's, we think Kosuke is at rock bottom, but he's not. He can always hit rock bottom harder. And I think there's two different rock bottoms for him. There is Rand dying, but I think learning that he's not Rand's son would hit harder. And if that happens first, then Rand dying might be more numbing to him. I mean, it could still hit him, but it might hit him differently. And I'm, you know, even though we keep thinking that Rand's death is haunting the narrative and that it's coming upon us, like, what if we get the birth reveal before that? You know, what if Rand's kicking around a little longer than we think?
I feel like the birth at this pace, I feel like the birth reveal is coming first.
Right. I feel like it too. Like, it feels like Rand has set everything up for this. And I'm not going to go into fast pass stuff, but it just feels like he's set things up. And this just includes things that we have already seen. Like, you know, there was that scene in that one episode that felt like it was going to lead us to a time skip, where we're just kind of seeing like Noel and Shanae dancing, and we're seeing little snippets of things that are happening elsewhere. Oh, what was that?
Episode 222.
Oh, thank you. Yes. And we kind of see, or was it in that same episode? Maybe it was elsewhere. But basically, where like Rand is talking to someone and Eugene is kind of like, I can't be here for this, which feels like it's a very private / personal thing. And it's kind of believed that Rand might be speaking with a lawyer at that time, which implies perhaps he is getting his affairs in order. He is updating the will.
Which we also see with him giving like the trust to Nana.
Yes, I was going to say,
Absolutely.
has this already happened? Yes. So we have seen that was updated. Giving the trust to her, asking that, she moves there. He's getting his affairs in order. But I feel like, yes, I just feel strongly that that's coming first before he dies.
Mhm.
And also because I just don't think Rand is going to die before he sees the ramifications of
No, I think Rand is
Kosuke being collateral damage.
I think he's seeing this through, and then he's kind of bopping off.
Yeah, it just...
And then it leaves Kosuke with such a fallout to deal with.
Yes, because we know that's going to take Kosuke to rock bottom. Like, finding out that your entire identity is not what you thought it was. Because for Kosuke, he has based his entire identity upon trying to be his father, trying to reach his father, and then learning that the person he's been trying to reach this whole time is not biologically his father. And while, again, I've stated this before, I will always consider Rand Kosuke's father because he is the man who was there and meant to raise him and tried to raise him. Kosuke is not going to feel that way, and he's going to take it in all the worst ways. And the whole, this is why my father didn't love me kind of things, because he is in that state of feeling the worst and thinking the worst and believing that nobody loves him and nobody cares. And we've also seen that Kosuke has gravitated toward, or has shown inclinations of self-harm when he, touched the razor blade. When it was, what was the
feelings
text?
of dread.
What was the text that was over it about wanting to feel something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Something about wanting to feel wanting to feel alive, maybe something to that extent. And there was the razor blade and the blood, and it was a very heavy indication. And I think I think we're going to see Kosuke try to take his life at some point. Because I think that's Kosuke rock bottom. I think that's what it is, because we already see that he's kind of shown with Hansuke this whole, I have nowhere else to go but my family. But
it also mirrors Noel's attempt that Kosuke was not very sympathetic towards.
Yes. So when Kosuke is in that position of Noel's, where he feels like he has no family and he has no one, I think he's definitely going to, like you said, mirror Noel. And you guys, I'm not gonna be ready for that. But I'm voicing this because I want to, point out that I feel like this is coming, but also because I feel like if you guys don't think you're going to be ready for that, you should invest in tissues. Just to put that out there. Like, I can't actually let myself go into detail talking about it or thinking about it because I do start crying. And I think it will just be devastating for a lot of people. I
found the panel, sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so it starts with him going to the bathroom and repeating Jace telling him to take care of himself, says, I've been trying to do that my whole life, taking care of myself. Me, where did it get me? And then he accidentally cuts himself and he's looking at the blood and he goes, what makes me feel most alive? I don't even know.
Yeah. And, whew. So, terrible way to be ending this podcast, but
dear God.
that I had to throw out there. I think that's kind of a trajectory that we're heading towards. And on the bright side, it would be he has nowhere else to go but up from there. Right?
That's the thing about the rock bottom, is we know that he's going to go up after it.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a really hard fall.
And I will cry a lot, guys.
And that's where we're at in I Love You, right? The fun, lighthearted slice of life moments from the first arc are over. our characters are
It's never
exposed.
coming
They're
back.
falling. It's not coming back. Like we're in this evolutions and confirmation and transformations era where everyone's on a road down. Even the people who are on a road up that road is dark, you know?
Mm.
And in the meantime, we get to look forward to the ski trip.
Fast spoiler, by the way. It is very funny because I have seen people saying, and you know what, I'm not going to criticize them for this. They're right for this. People who have said that they had to drop I Love You because they realized it's like really dark and bleak. And I'm like,
Sometimes you gotta.
you're right. And if it's dragging you down, you're right to quit it. But also, I guess to me, I do see rays of hope because
There's so much hope. We're saying about Kosuke, like he's going to hit rock bottom because that's how he comes back up, you know?
right. But also, I think it helps that I've convinced myself that the bittersweet ending is that we aren't going to get the just desserts justice that we want. And that helps me reconcile with everything else that's going on, because acknowledging that it's not going to have the perfect ending and acknowledging that characters that I care about are going to go through shit and some of them are not going to come out of it. Alyssa, I love you. I love you. I wish I could pull you out. Like if Ella and I could go and just like rip you out of those pages ourselves, we would, and we would cradle you. But unfortunately, you are in a manhwa and isekai is not real. But yeah, like, and I get it. I fully get people who are like, I started this because it was really funny, and now all of the humor is gone, and it's bleak, and it's depressing, and it's dragging me down. I'm like, okay, you got a point there. Like, I'm not gonna deny that.
Put it down.
I feel like it's great commentary on the world we live in, but that's not what all people read for. So like I too need to know what happens. I'm very invested. I care so much about these characters. I'm even invested in the characters that people hate. And that just speaks for some of the dedication that I feel. And like I said, I'm not holding this against people who were like, I had to quit because like I get it. I think those of us who stay are because, like you, either it's because we need to know, or it's because we just care so much about the characters, or because we do well with darker stories. There's a lot of people who are like, I can't stand really happy fluffy stories because there's nothing, there's no drama, there's no strife. And like, listen, I get it, that's me. But actually, I think this is a good place for us to end the episode, but we can continue this conversation if you guys would like, which is a good way for me to mention to our listeners that if you are not in the Discord server, you can always join. That way you can join us for the live sessions and you can join our chat, which means you can also join our little after parties where we, stay hanging out. And we can do more voice chat where we can free people so that they can come and speak to us with their voices, or we can continue talking with the chat as well. That's fine. We don't force anyone to use your voice if you guys are shy. But I think we're going to wrap it up here. What do you think, Elle?
I think so too. And if you are not in our Discord and you'd like to join us at discord.gg/I love you.
And once again, I would like to do a big shout out to everybody who helps us make this podcast a thing at all. Big shout out to Rin, who has been a really big help in us being able to edit and has made the videos overall far better quality than we could ever do before. Big shout out to Kiko, who has created so many really cute art assets that we use. Big shout out to Solidaritea, who made our jingle for us. And big shout out to everybody who joins our actual podcasts, whether or not you make it the entire session, if you just lurk and hang out, or if you participate in the chat. literally, we could not be doing this without you guys. So once again, thank you, everybody. And I hope you guys look forward to our next episode.
Yeah, we love you all and we hope to see you again soon.
Bye-bye.